At Your End Step is brought to you by Comic Town and BCW Supplies. Hello, and welcome to At Your End Step. My name is Morgan. I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And Dave.
Hi.
And we have another fun-filled episode for you folks this week. Not much to talk about. We're actually recording a little bit early because we're sitting down. We're preparing our bodies for the Palooza that's going to be happening. I know I kind of chomped a bit on your flavor there, Mike.
I was ready, and you just took it.
No, we'll still have a proper introduction to the Palooza, but I'm just letting people know.
Okay.
Why we're not talking about, like, I don't know, anything else that's going on currently in Magic, because there's like two GPs that are one is already ended and one is currently still going on. It's because we're recording on a Sunday, so we weren't going to be talking about any of the GPs or anything like that. And
we might have a live update at some point.
I mean, potentially, yeah.
I mean, but we don't even, depending on when that live update happens, it could be 2 weeks after the fact.
Yeah.
Nah, it'll be. I'm guessing pretty. Seeing the decks in the top 8, I'm guessing it's gonna be sooner rather than later.
But we're recording the entire
Palooza!
all in one sitting and chopping it up into to multiple episodes. So yeah, because I know that we're kind of just busy for the next 2 weeks, and we want to make sure that you guys still get episodes and that we still have something to put out there. But we won't be able to.
And let's be honest, we know that you enjoy us, but when you see that 3-hour plus episode pop up on your feed, all of us collectively go, all right. So we'll chop it up a little bit. We help everyone out.
Yeah, exactly. But so we really don't have anything else beforehand as far as that is concerned. And we just want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Comic Town. You can find out more information about all their pre-releases and stuff like that at their Facebook, which is, you can just do a search for Comic Town Gaming Center on there, or worldofcomictown.com. So let's just jump right in. Let's just start with White.
Yeah, so we'll do our normal thing. We're going to go into our different colors. We'll try to break down cards with it. I think, just like talking quickly before we start, there's more cards overall to talk about. And I think part of that is just going through, and I curated at least the first run of the spreadsheet, and I think so many of the uncommons that are legends have rare effects, like cards that would probably be rare in other sets, that it makes for more cards to talk about.
Absolutely.
And having, we did get to cube and proxy out some of these cards to try out, and they're a blast.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, if you have a common and uncommon cube, this is like the best set ever. Like, there's so many, like you said, the uncommon legends have like very, like, in any other set they probably would have been rare.
Yeah, they're pushed like, definitely for uncommon.
Yeah.
I do, again, I know we want to get into this, and I'm making this take longer, so deal with it, Morgan, but I think it's interesting how they sort of threw a lot of New World Order out the window for this set, and I appreciate that. It's not quite as complex as Time Spiral Block was, where you had, Cycling Madness on one card, but I noticed that a lot of the commons have additional things that they do, as opposed to being like more vanilla, like things that in years past they've said we don't add this complexity to common very often, and the whole set feels pushed down complexity wise to make room for it. So it feels like a very old style set, which makes sense for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Well, the last time we saw Dominaria was Future Sight.
That's what I said, like Time Spiral. Yeah,
whereas like the most complex was as far as different abilities and things like that.
Referencing cards that don't exist.
Yeah. They've kept the actual the actual abilities and everything down this time. It's pretty, but no, I agree with what you're saying.
So that being said, let's start with our first uncommon legend with Baird, Steward of Argive. This is a 2 white for a 2/4 legendary creature human soldier. It has vigilance. And it says, creatures can attack you or a planeswalker you control, unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures. So this card has a lot of things sort of built into it. We see a mixture of a couple of older style abilities, cards that you might have seen on, like, Propaganda, what's the white enchantment version?
Ghostly
Prison, and I think of Windborn Muse as well, printed on a creature. And it being a 2/4 with vigilance makes it kind of terrifying for some aggressive swarm strategies, because you can't just bolt this creature. Or lightning strike it in standard, if you will, and you have to pay a lot of mana to swarm around it. So I don't know how many decks are in the sort of in the market for this 2/4 for 4. but it really does tax aggressive strategies that are trying to go wide. And we're going to look at some other cards in this set, specifically tokens, that this could really put a damper on. So I think this card has a chance.
Yeah, I'm not really seeing it in constructed. I think it's doesn't do quite enough, but it's a good card to keep in mind. Like, if there is like a super go wide strategy, then obviously this can really put a hurting on them.
Have you seen what's in green? Have you seen that Thalids are going to be constructed playable? Yeah,
That's fair. I mean, yeah, maybe this is like a sideboard card or something.
I'm thinking of specifically cards like Song of Freyalise, which are going to see play. That this card does a pretty good job of, holding back a little bit. So, but you're right. I agree with you. It is fringe for constructed just based on the fact that you're paying for a giant spider, but I think its ability is strong. Morgan has no opinion. So,
I think this card is in a weird spot. I don't know what deck is going to pop up that will need something like this that can't necessarily play like a sweeper effect, since this is in white. Maybe if there is an aggressive black-white deck that wants to have something to combat Saprolings, maybe that's the corner case we're looking at. But it's a card that has applications, but I don't know if there's a home for it.
That's fair. Yeah, so let's move on.
All right, next one. So this is the first in the kind of cycle of triple costed or triple color costed spells. So we have a Benelish Marshal. So it's white for a 3/3 human knight. It says other creatures you control get +1/+1. Pretty straightforward. 3/3 for 3 is not bad on its own, and pumping the rest of your team, pretty good. Has a relevant creature type. We see a lot of knights in this set, and things that interact with knights. So in addition to just pumping your team, you also get some bonuses there.
Yeah, I think a lot of decks, and this is older, but are already in the business of playing. Well, I mean, even in standard currently, people are playing Radiant Destiny. You're paying 3 mana for this effect essentially already. So I'd rather have the 3/3. Easier to interact with. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah, I mean, compare this to something like Glorious Anthem, which is just like 3 mana, same effect, but you don't get the body. You know what I mean? And Glorious Anthem was constructed playable in its day. It's probably time has passed.
Radiant Destiny sees plays now, and that's a 3 mana enchantment that does it. It offers vigilance as its upside, right? So, I think this card is definitely good. It's hard to cast. You can play both. Yeah. And knights, we'll talk about knights in general here in a minute, but knights definitely do seem relevant for that. So, hard to cast. You're probably not splashing this anywhere.
Yeah, you're probably going to play this in mono white, but that's fine.
Good.
The only you could potentially play in a knight's deck and get away with it, because we do have Unclaimed Territory, which might help out with that. And we are getting another black-white land, so that's the other time place where you could maybe cheat it, maybe get away with it. But this is typically going to be your mono white deck.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like black white, you play the fast land and you get the new.
Yeah, you get Isolated Chapel.
The Innistrad land. Yeah.
Next up, we have Board the Weatherlight, which is a generic and a white for a sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a historic card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And then we actually saw this card. Was it the end of last week we saw this card?
Yeah.
First off, the art is just awesome. This is literally the story moment where Jorah picks up Gideon and Liliana because Johnny knew they were there. And I just want you to understand that if you like the lore at all, those 4 names together, that's great. Anyways.
I just wanted to mention, so we haven't talked about historic.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Historic is just an artifact, a legendary card, or a saga. Yeah,
so, you literally, you can hit, again, any artifact, sagas, but then you can also hit now creatures. You could hit enchantments, because we have legendary enchantments in the format. We have legendary sorceries in the format, and all planeswalkers are legendary. So I think when I first saw this card, I thought, okay, I don't know, but I don't think you actually have to do very much to build your deck specifically to make this a hit most of the time. And I think I thought that when I first saw it. And if you are building for it, then I think this is pretty could be pretty powerful. We've started to see some deck lists. We've had some people who've gotten a chance to mess around, playing a little bit, and this is a card that I have seen C play with in conjunction with some other cards we'll mention here. But I think it can be used in some pretty interesting ways. We think of like Knights. We just talked about the Knights deck. We have the Sagas we could talk about. We also have not equipment too much, but vehicles we could talk about that would be good to hit. Like Heart of Kirin, you could still hit off of this. Not to mention any legend you'd want. I think this card is deceptively good.
I have definitely, during like cursory Dominaria testing, have had this card cast against me for 1 mana because of Baral. Which was pretty good, but it's a build around me. Like, you have to be able to pretty much hit consistently, since you don't get. I feel like a lot of these have like freebies built in, like land. Like a lot of these say land on it, and that feels like, you know what? If the worst thing I get from this is a land, then like that's potentially pretty bad. But at least I still get something. Where this one, due to how it currently is set up, we don't have. Do we have any legendary lands currently?
No.
In standard?
We had the one from Shadow's Block rotate out, so I don't think we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have enchantments that turn into legendary lands.
Hold on here. Is the one that is indestructible and adds 5, is that legendary in Amonkhet Block?
I have no idea, but that's a bad land.
You're not wrong.
You're not going to play that anyway, so.
All right, fair enough.
Don't even bother looking that one up.
Okay, I won't then.
Yeah, I wouldn't exactly call this a build around me, but this is like helps you play other build around cards. So like if you're playing a deck that's built around a certain specific artifact or something like that, like you don't have access to. I guess like this is like your Ancient Stirrings like for standard. You know what I mean? Like
sure,
it's way worse than Ancient Stirrings, like you said, because you can't get a land. But sometimes you got to play what you play.
And that's fair, but I think again, and I also think that there's still some combo decks hiding in the format, and this is enabler for that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think this is more of like a support for some kind of combo strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and 5 is pretty deep, so yeah, it's an interesting card to like not forget about as we get deeper into the format, I think.
Sure. Dave, I highlighted 3 here on our spreadsheet. I kind of thought we should talk about some of these together, since these are some of our night cards that maybe I think 2 out of these 3 cards probably wouldn't talk about by themselves, but together they might help make the deck. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
So, do you want to do all 3?
Sure. So we have Call the Cavalry, History of Benalia, and Knight of Grace. So Call the Cavalry is pretty straightforward. It's 3 and a white sorcery, create 2 white knight creatures with vigilance.
Which, if you haven't seen the Benalia Knight token,
So good.
oh my gosh,
It's so good.
It's
stained glass. It's a stained glass token. It is.
Yeah, the Benalia, just in general, like you see this a lot in the art. It's just like a lot of stained glass, like stained glass shields. You had like on one card.
The History of Benalia, right?
History of Benalia itself. History of Benalia is what's one of the first sagas we saw. I think.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe it was the first one. That's 1 white. As it enters, you create a 2/2 Vigilance Knight. On Act 2, you do the same thing, and then in Act 3, you knights you control get +2/+1.
all the sagas are 3-act plays.
I'm totally fine with that. That hits me in the right spot.
Yeah.
Also, it actually works flavorfully because there is a red. I doubt we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk about the red like uncommon that can skip ahead.
I did put that on here.
Oh, is it? Okay, well then we'll wait. But I appreciate the red, like, it's like, move on. I'm
This was boring.
Yeah. So yeah, well, the ultimate on this is knights you control get +2/+1 until end of turn, and then the other one, Knight of Grace, is kind of a callback to White Knight. It's 1 on a white for a 2/2 first strike human knight. It has a hexproof from black, and then it gets +1/+0 as long as any player controls a black permanent. So this is like some of the, I guess some of the backup that we were talking about for potential knight strategies. We have other just like generic good knights that we'll get into as well. But yeah, I don't know about Call the Cavalry as much. 4 mana make 2 2/2s. It doesn't seem that exciting to me, but I mean, I guess like if you go like Banalish Marshal into that, it's like not the worst thing ever.
And if you're trying to like, I think you're at least considering that card if you're trying to make History of Benalia as effective as it could be. History of Benalia with these knights that have vigilance makes it kind of kind of gives them a step up ahead of some other strategies that might race you because you get to block. But it's possible that Call of the Cavalry is just not good enough, but it is planted there for that reason. I do think History Benalia is pretty straightforward. I think it's good by itself, even with not too much support for Knights. I think Knight of Grace is deceptively good, though. I think some people have just I've seen some articles already. People it's like, oh, I get it. Like it has hexproof, but you should have just reprinted Blank Knight or whatever. But I think they forget how good First Strike is on a 2-drop like this. How it just randomly, like this one, just can't randomly be killed by Fatal Push. And it is very easy if you decide to, as Morgan already alluded to, black-white seems to be the color for Knights anyways. If you are pretty consistently making this a 3-2 with First Strike, against any other creature, like low-to-the-ground creature deck at all, it's really hard to beat this creature in combat.
Yeah.
So it is one of those things that, as you're looking for those quality 2-drops that really stick a deck together, and I think that Knight of Grace is pretty effective in that. So,
and just for the sheer fact that there are a lot of times where there are already decks in the format that are black white, not black white, but blue white approach or something like that won't be able to interact with the pro white version.
White one, yes.
Yeah, not the hexproof from white version, where it's just like
the Knight of Malice.
Yeah, so just how we said Fatal Push doesn't work. Well, we're gonna talk about Seal Away, and Seal Away won't work for the other one. So they complement each other pretty well with how you're able to deal with them. Now you can say, well, Lightning Strike deals with both of them fairly well, and you'd be right, but
they better have it because red is not going to attack them through a 3-2 First Strike.
Exactly, they need to have the shock or
with
the
one
bolt.
exception, which we'll also get to. So,
sure, yeah.
I think I would say it's tentatively excited. I keep saying that because we're naming other cards they interact with in the same set, and we say, well, except for this, because that's how a set should feel. But anyways, we should move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our first of a couple of legendary characters' descendants. This is Daneth the Capuchin, Paragon. 2 generic and a white for a 2/2 legendary creature human knight. First strike, vigilance, lifelink, or an equipment spells you cast cost one less to cast. Now see, this is one of those things where this feels like a rare. It's got has a ton of keywords and also affects 2 card types that aren't fairly common.
Yeah.
This feels like a rare consistently.
I mean, we have Saram that exists, who is a rare, that doesn't have all those abilities, and, looks for similar things, too.
Yeah, so I think that I don't know where this card's kind of at. 3 mana is a lot for a 2/2, even with First Strike and Lifelink. However, the payoff here, especially, again, if you are already... there's already an Aura's deck in Standard, as you already mentioned, Saram, and
yeah.
I think that you put a couple of enchantments on this. There's a couple good ways to give it flying, and now it's vigilance, and you start really building a threat that is tough to deal with and is really hard to race because of the built-in lifelink. So I don't know how good it will be in those decks, how often those decks are searching for a 3-drop, but it was already playing 1 3-drop before, which was I literally played this deck at a PBTQ playing the 3 mana version of Invisible Stalker, and this card just might be better.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to talk about the next card we talk about might also go with it. So, I don't know. I'm tentatively excited for this card, but it could also just do nothing. That's what's crazy about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, if we have enough good... I wish we had better equipment. We might have enough auras, but I wish we had, one good piece of equipment that we could put on it. And maybe, I don't know. Are we going to talk about the shield? The shield that's in the equipment?
We could, but I don't know.
I think that card is deceptive. Just having I think preventing 2 damage to things, it could be good, but maybe it's a stretch. But I wish we had a good piece of equipment that really went with this, and not just good as in raw power, efficient. We just don't have an efficient or powerful enough piece of equipment, it feels like, to make this work. So
yeah, I think that's where I'm at with it. But I want it to do well because if you Voltron this up and it flies and it has vigilance and First Strike, and I don't know how you get past it. You better have the removal spell.
Right, exactly. But oh well.
Next up, Dave.
All right, so next up, I think this is one of the best cards in the set, actually.
Fair enough.
Dauntless Bodyguard. So cost a white for a 2/1 human knight. As it enters the battlefield, choose another creature you control, and then you can sacrifice it to give the chosen creature indestructible until end of turn. So this is probably the best Savannah line we've ever had.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Like, it's just a 1-mana 2/1 on turn 1, and then if you draw it, in the mid game, it could still get value. If you have a threat out there, say you have a Danitha that's all suited up, cast this, and then it gives you some protection from removal spells or wraths or whatever.
I think it's probably the second best. I think Kithian probably still gives this card a run for its money overall, because this one's still pretty awkward on turn 1. You can't.
It's awkward. It just is.
It's still just a beater.
Yeah, it just is Savannah Lines.
But you don't necessarily get any of its benefits.
That's all that Kithian is on turn 1 ever. It's never more than that.
Right, but sometimes it can just be a planeswalker.
Not on turn 1.
Not on turn 1.
You said on turn 1.
But they both scale better later on.
Yeah, okay, it's one of the best. We're getting a lot of Savannah Lions.
This seems good for a lot of reasons. It's a relevant creature type, so it can already see play. We already have a set of deck that was looking for this effect possibly anyways. I got to cast this card in Cube with Flagbearer with Dave's Cube.
Dumb.
And this thing on the Flagbearer, it was a real problem for a lot of people. This is I can't interact with your board. No, you got to point at that flag guy. Hope you can kill it, because it's not going to die. So, but yeah, I agree. Calling one of the best cards of the set that's a pretty good declaration, but I can't say anything bad about it. I love this design. I love what it does. I love how it feels. So, before we move on, I want to mention Dub is the next card technically on the list here. And, I know that they have, WotC has cultivated a list of, singular card names, words they haven't used on cards they only are going to get put on cards that are either super flavorful or easy to reprint. Because there are only so many words. So I think it's awesome that Dub has to have been one of those, and here it is. Dub. You are now a knight. That is good on you. I love it.
Listen, all I want to do now is draft the set and then put a Dub on a Yargle so he could be Sir Yargle.
Oh yeah, if you dub a creature, it becomes Sir, right?
Yeah, of course.
That has to be the flavor judge ruling. That's actually insane. Next up, though, we do want to talk about Fall of the Thran, which is a saga. This is 5 generic and a white, again for an enchantment saga. Act 1, I'm going to keep saying this, Act 1 is destroy all lands. And then Acts 2 and 3 are both, each player returns 2 land cards from their graveyard to the battlefield. I think this card is interesting. That first act, destroy all lands, is not... When's the last time we saw that effect in Standard? Was it a Johnny? Where you could destroy that many lands? A Johnny Vengeant, I mean.
Yeah, and that was a long time ago at this point.
Yeah, this is just not something they do very often.
Yeah, I did not expect to see an effect like this.
When was Boom Bust? What's up with Boom Bust?
That was in Planar Chaos.
Okay, so that's still pre. Yeah, so anyways, this is not a common effect. Now, granted, it doesn't stay that way. You're going to get some lands back, but I think you can use this to sort of 6 mana is a lot to say you can use this like White Weenie used something like Armageddon, but you can definitely set it up so that you are ahead when this happens. You also technically get to use your lands first, because it's on your turn. Yes, they have 2 lands untapped, but you could have 2 lands and play a land drop, and you could also technically, depending on how your lands worked out, play a land drop after you cast this. Good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you're going to see this in a white weenie strategy, because I think just 6 mana is too much, but I think you could see it in potentially a green-white strategy where you have mana dorks and ways to ramp, things like that.
That's fair.
And also you don't necessarily need to get through all 3 acts on this. You could, Armageddon, maybe get to Act 2, get 2 of your lands back, and then if you have a way to remove it, then your opponent just I guess they would get 2 lands back at the same time. Right. But if you have a way to remove it before you get through all 3, you're not necessarily both rebuild.
It is important to know that theoretically you can interact with this in your upkeep and stop them from getting lands back. So if you do have 2 elves, you could be I'll naturalize.
Yeah, is there a way to just sacrifice enchantments in the format right now?
I don't know.
There's nothing that currently sees play, I don't think, but...
Yeah, I don't know if just sack a permanent, do this. I don't think so, but it's possible.
Anyway, that's something to just keep in mind or keep an eye out for.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know.
I also think it's important that there are a couple of we've already seen a couple of ramp strategies. There's been the black-green Masterminds acquisition deck that is essentially just a big ramp deck. There are a number of cards in this set to go along with things like Raging Swordtooth and Ramanop Excavator that would lead you to building a big lands deck. So having a card like this that can just come down and say, you know what? I think we should have the same amount of lands. I think that's fair. I think we both worked hard this game, and we should both have the same amount of lands. It's kind of interesting. So I don't know where this card goes, but I know I'm probably going to get real salty when it gets cast against me. All right, moving right along.
All right, so
Baneslayer?
next card we have, Neo Baneslayer. So we have Lyra Dawnbringer. 3 white for Legendary Angel. It's a 5/5 flying first strike lifelink, and other angels you control get +1/+1.
Irrelevant text.
And have lifelink. It's not completely irrelevant.
It isn't, but it feels stapled.
It's more relevant than Baneslayer's like protection from Demons and Dragons Claws probably was.
In this set, would it be though?
There's some other like pretty good angels.
Glorybringer is in this format.
Yeah, that would have been great.
And
Glorybringer doesn't kill this.
Grand Poobah Bells and Lock is in this format, so that's one.
I don't know. I mean, like, it's not much to say about this card. Like, it's clearly, like, I think everybody's just going to compare it to Baneslayer. Obviously, I guess the main downside is this is legendary, so you can't have multiples in play. But other than that, I think it's better.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think it is better, but
it is awkward that we have cards like Ravenous Chupacabra in the format, which kind of invalidate this type of creature, which doesn't have like an enters battlefield effect, but still like very powerful. And if you open this in limited, just take it.
Yeah, just take it. It's for you.
It's probably going to win every game.
The phone was ringing. It's for you. I wanted to try this with Catcher's Monument, which is still in the standard.
Yeah.
So make it cost 4. Seems pretty fine.
This is like where like the bodyguard could be like, it's like, I got you.
Yeah, that's
nice.
true. I like that. So yeah, just a good card. We'll certainly see play. Next up is probably one that you might not have thought would see play, but it's already popped up enough for me to have wanted to add to this, and Dave Morgan confirmed we could keep it, so I'm not just indulging myself here. But this is On Sarah's Wings, which is 3 generic and a white for a legendary enchantment aura, meaning you can get it off of Board the Weatherlight. Enchanted creature. Enchanted creature is legendary, gets +1/+1, and has flying, vigilance, and lifelink. So 4 mana, this is supposed to, in my mind, resemble like Sarah's Embrace. In the Urza's block, you had a cycle of embraces, which were was Sarah's, Shiv's, Zephyr? Zephid, that's right, that's a guy. Gaia, and what was Black? Did Black have an embrace?
I don't know.
Is it like?
Oh no, they did. Was it a vampire or something?
I don't know. It was. It wasn't Sendry Embrace, but it was. Whatever. But it was a cycle. This is sort of like that. But this is a couple interesting things. First off, it being legendary, making the creature legendary has obviously things in this format. I have seen it get some talk being used in 2 ways. One is with Shauna Sisay's Legacy, which that it gets the one that gets its power and toughness equal number of creatures you control, and then it can't be targeted. It has hexproof from your opponent's abilities. So if they have things like, as we mentioned, steal away and cast out and things like that, then it can't do it. And giving that creature flying is pretty good. But I've also seen it played with, and I'm going to try and make sure I get this name right. Traxos Scourge of Krug, which is a card we'll get to, but it's essentially a 7/7 for 4, but it comes to the battlefield tapped, and it only untaps if you cast a historic spell. Well, if you cast this on it, it untaps it because it's a legendary enchantment, and then it gives Traxos Vigilance, so you have an 8/8 trample flying vigilance lifelinking creature.
It's pretty hard to beat.
It's not easy to beat. So I think this card has some interesting applications, making it legendary, and I think it's the only legendary aura in the entire set. So
yeah, it is, as far as I know.
It seems purposeful, like one of those weird little things where you're like, wait a second, why? So I think it's important. And part of the why might also just be, we don't want you to have 2 of these in play at once. So but I think that the card is possibly good.
Sleeper.
Yeah, sleeper. Yeah.
Vampiric Embrace was the black one.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which is just generic. It's not like,
a person,
it's like a deity or something, an old like planeswalker or something. It's just vampiric. That's it.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, moving on. Dave has Seal Away. Seal Away.
I'm getting all the good ones so far.
Seal Away.
So Seal Away, it's 1 and a white for an enchantment, but it has flash. It's kind of like an instant. When it enters the battlefield, exile target tapped creature an opponent controls until Seal Away leaves the battlefield. So we've seen cards like this. Not one with this exact text before, but we're starting to see like a lot of these kind of like instant speed or like flash enchantments, like Oblivion Ring style cards. What was the last one we had? It was like the double white. It was just Snare. Stasis Snare, yeah. Which, could hit anything. It didn't have to be tapped or anything like that. But being 2 mana is a big deal. I think this is solid removal. Can actually hit some of the more problematic threats in Standard.
Both the Scarab God and Hazoret.
Yeah, I think that'll be a recurring theme, like as we go through the Palooza here. But yeah, I mean these are real things, and like this is something where if Seal Away starts seeing a lot of play, that's something that you need to keep in mind. It's like, okay, maybe I don't want to attack with my Hazoret. Maybe I'm just going to keep it back and pitch cards to it. So even like the threat of just having a Seal Away, it might be enough to have people not attack, and I think that's pretty cool. Like it actually influences gameplay decisions and not just deck building.
It also, yeah, you're right. On the flip side of that too, it also increases like how good things like Vigilance are, and we see cards like Angel of Invention, for example, having Vigilance that has, outside of Godfrey's Gifts, fallen out of favor, but might be a little more appealing as your end game if you know that your 5-drop can't get hit by that piece of 2 mana removal. So yeah, I think it's definitely good though.
It's really good with Authority of the Councils as well.
That is true.
Very, very good.
You must be tapped.
That's a 1-2 punch.
So 1 mana, then 2 mana.
Yeah,
there you go.
1-2.
No, I think this is pretty cool, and like we have the one that's already in Standard, right? It only hits, was it 3 or less?
Yeah,
the one that you get a dinosaur.
You get a dino, like
Baffling End.
And that one can be awkward because it doesn't hit like those like main threats that we're talking about. So this can hit anything. You could play it early. If you want to take out their 1-drop or whatever. So yeah, I think this will see a decent amount of Standard.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, I agree. I think of was it Swift Reckoning saw play, and it seems kind of similar to that as far as how it works.
Or even the one that was just like destroy an attacking creature,
right?
Like whatever. I can't remember the name of it. Mm-mm. Sorry, I haven't played a lot of Standard.
I don't think that's a card name.
I'm pretty sure Sorry is a name in one of the unglued sets.
It's possible.
I don't know.
Next up we have Sha-la-la-la-la-la. Oh, sorry. No?
Go on and kiss the ego.
No.
Oh, well.
Shalai, Voice of Plenty. I thought it was a good joke because it sounded like that. It was Voice of Plenty, made like a singing button, like, it was there. This is 3 generic and a white for a 3/4 legendary creature angel. Has flying. It says you, planeswalkers you control, and other creatures you control have hexproof. And then it has an activated ability of 4 generic green. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So we talked about this card a little bit a few weeks ago when it got spoiled, and now in context of the rest of the format, I think this card's a real player. It was already good enough as a 4-mana 3/4 that offered the hex, like essentially it itself is a flag bearer, as I mentioned before. Hey, you can only look at me. Oh, look, I have a bodyguard now. How's that going to work? But I think that before I mentioned the activated ability might isn't even something you really need to look at. But I think based on what I'm seeing, the construction of some of these white-green decks and things like the Song of Freyalise working with it, this actually might not be something that is that rare. You might see this get activated more often than even I initially thought. So this card was already good when I saw it, and I think it's gotten better in context of the rest of the set.
Yeah, and if you're playing like a go wide strategy, like just green-white, like maybe Growing Rates of Itlamok is something like that you might want to play, and then you have something to dump your mana into if you want to do that. So I think that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree. I know you like this one, Morgan.
Yeah. I think like green white has shown itself to be a pretty viable strategy within standard. I don't know what necessarily green white looks like going forward. But I think it gets a lot of new stuff and like figuring out the right balance. But I really like this card, so I expect to see it. And like I said, we've previously talked about this card, and people have been talking about it, and potentially with modern implications as well. So you never know where this card might show up, but I think it's good. So we'll see.
Nice. Next one.
Tashar Ancestors Apostle.
There you go.
So this is 3 and a white for a legendary bird cleric. It's a 2/2 flyer. Whenever you cast a historic spell, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I don't know what this is going to do, but it's going to be broken.
That's how I feel about it too.
Yeah, I don't know, like, I don't have a shell or anything in mind for this. All I know is...
All I know is
let's look at like a format like Modern, for example, right? And, any artifact can trigger this. So... And returning things from the graveyard to the battlefield for free... Yeah.
In Standard, you have a Mox that turns this on.
Yeah.
I want you to understand, that is disgusting to me.
I'm guessing there's going to be some kind of infinite combo involved with this card. Yeah. Again, I don't know. This doesn't seem like a real card.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know what it does either, but it's gross.
It's not going to be like, quote unquote, value. It's going to be like, the game is over. But yeah. So we'll leave it to the Matt Nasses of the world to break this one.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess you're kind of lucky it only targets creatures.
Yeah,
so
I'm already thinking it probably has like this card, and it has the Renegade Rallier. Like those together probably do something. Right? They gotta do something.
You figure it out.
That's like your standard value. I'm thinking more like Modern. Maybe even Legacy. Who knows? Yeah, I mean it's obviously like a very susceptible body.
There's got to be something that you can sack, and then in doing so return you can return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand, and then you just like have a 0-cost artifact and you cast it, and you can so you just have this in a sack outlet. There has to be some combination of cards.
How does this interact with because it's cast, right?
Yes.
So you figure out. You just play this with Walking Ballista. You just have one in the graveyard, one in your hand, and then you just go infinite with casting that, and then you.
Well, but you've got to. It comes from the graveyard to the battlefield. So you've got. What I'm saying is you've got to have something that when it comes to the battlefield, it triggers and returns something to your hand. That's what it's got to be. Like
again, yeah, we're not.
It's there. I don't know what it is, but it's there.
This thing is. Yeah. This thing is not real.
All right, let's finish up white with Urza's Ruinous Blast.
Urza make a boom boom.
Oh, man. Anyways, this is for generic and a white for a legendary sorcery. You can only cast a legendary sorcery if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. And I think it's important to know because I've already tried to play around with this. Doesn't count if you have legendary enchantments or legendary artifacts. Anyways, exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. I wasn't sure, and I'm still not sure how this stands in the context of the format. It's certainly going to see play, and it's certainly something you can build around, where you can cast this and your planeswalkers don't go away. But of course, your opponent's planeswalkers don't go away either.
Right.
So you've got to be careful with this. But this card could be pretty disgusting if you decide to build your deck in such a fashion that it doesn't affect you.
Yeah, and from what I've seen, like that's obviously what people are trying to do with this. It feels weird because this is obviously powerful, but again, if your opponents are also trying to do similar things to you, then it feels like a really bad card. You'll still probably get something, but if your opponent keeps around, the thing that is going to kill you, then you paid 5 mana for potentially nothing. So I think this is pretty swingy as far as its power level. It'll see play, but I think like
as the format develops, then people will just naturally have more legendary, permanence in general, and will cause this to kind of lose its power.
I'm not really big on this card.
Oh, that's fair.
That might be a hot take. I don't know. But
I don't think it's that hot of a take. Again, if the idea of this card is super powerful, then at that same time the card has no power because everyone will be trying to play
it. That's true. What was the card that we had in standard for a little while? It was like triple white, 3, same effect essentially.
Are you talking about
Planar Cleansing?
Planar Cleansing,
yeah. Because that was 6, right?
Yes.
6 mana. So this is like you get a discount.
We have that in standard 2 currently. It's not just Planar Cleansing. We have Hour of... Which hour is it?
Revelation?
Hour of Revelation does that as well. Destroys all online permanents and costs
so if you're playing
white 3, right?
Yeah, so if you're playing that type of card, right, you already have to build your deck in a certain way. Like we saw, so last time Planar Cleansing was in standard, we saw like Jim Davis played like a blue-white control deck and did not play like Detention Sphere. That was like a pretty staple card in blue-white, but you can't really play it. Just like you wouldn't want to play like Seal Away if you're playing this card.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you don't want to like
leave them with something afterwards.
Hit your own stuff and then give them their creature back. So it's like you already have to build your deck in a certain way to take advantage of this. And on top of that, you also need to have like Planeswalker or Legendary card or Legendary creature to even cast it. And then even then, like you have to hope that your opponent doesn't have like, a Scarab God that it doesn't hit. I just don't see, like, I think it might be like a sideboard card against like a green-white go wide or something like that, like a way to just sweep up all the tokens, possibly. But I don't know. It seems like a lot of hoops to jump through.
Good job. And even then, you might just want Hour of Revelation at that point in time, especially if it's against like something go wide, because like their permanents will reduce your cost. So
and there's also like Fumigate still in the format, which
exactly
is, like pretty good. So I don't know. I'm not really seeing it. Like I think it's cool, and like I do think like in general, like the legendary sorceries they tell a cool story and they're flavorful and stuff. But this one, I'm not really feeling. I do think there are other ones that are better, but
yeah, it's fair. But I think it's playable. But I get what you're saying. Your criticism is super valid.
Yeah. So I think White definitely got a lot of sweet playables. Couple powerful cards. And I mean, they got Tashar, so we'll see what busted things come from that card. But I think like History of Benalia and some of the Knights are also worthy enough to see play. Maybe if not immediately, right out of the gate, then maybe come rotation we see something a brewing with that.
Yeah, I mean we essentially get like a whole new creature type, not a new creature type, but new to standard really creature type that like we can kind of play around with Knights.
And some of the, I think Mike's pointed this out previously, but some of the vampires from Ixalan are Knights as well. So
right.
Yeah, they seeded them in pretty effectively, and I think the nice thing too is that so all the colors have some sort of a bit of a strange creature type that it gets a little bit of support. We have Knights in white and Wizards in blue and red. Knights are also in black. We have the Goblins also in red, and in Saprolings in green. And Saprolings are pretty well supported, but everything else is supported, but not fully. But we have a core set coming, which we haven't had in a few years. And core sets are really easy ways to fill in the holes for tribes that don't really quite have it yet. So I think that's also something to pay attention to.
I to be honest with you, I prefer sets like this where it's like is a loose like support of like creature types, but it's not just so in your face. Like I really did not like Ixalan block, for example, because it was like so in your face and like it's still not good enough for standard for the most part. True. So it's like I don't know. Like I prefer to have just more just generally good cards, and some of them have some overlap with like creature synergies.
Fair enough. Well, let's move on to blue.
Yeah, dabba doo dabba die.
Oh man.
All right.
This is a song about the antiquities war.
So the Antiquities War. It's another saga. It's 3 and a blue. So are we gonna go with acts or chapters?
I like acts.
Yeah, I like acts as well.
Okay, acts 1 and 2.
Their body spray is okay.
They're both the same. So they both say, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Then Act 3, artifacts you control become artifact creatures with base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn. So this is kind of like Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas. Like, so your first 2 are like your +1s or whatever, and your 3 is, I guess, the -1 for all your artifacts.
This is Tezzeret the Seeker. Agent of Bolas is the loser. That took me a second. I was like, I
guess it's a mix of it's a mix of both, then, right?
It is a mix of both.
Yeah,
yes.
There you go.
Yeah, that is fair.
Yeah. Certainly pretty powerful. I mean, if you have enough artifacts in your deck to build around this, you can definitely just go crazy with this. Yeah, I don't know, like, what artifacts you'd play with it, but...
Well, you still have Kaladesh block, which is pretty important. And you have a lot of good artifacts that way. I think I tried to start brewing this a little bit just to see what it could do, and I do think that Thopters might be the way to go, because you have Whirler Virtuoso and Maverick Thopterists, and an easy way to win is to take a bunch, like, 4 1/1 flyers and then make them 5/5 flyers, and then hit them for 20. So that's a way to look at it. This definitely fights, I think, with Karn for a space, but it may not be fight. It may just be coexist, because they do work really well together. So I think this is really interesting, because your opponent gets to see this coming, and you get to set it up as well. So now you get to play the cool mini game of, all right, can I make sure I'm not just dead to their 5/5s? And I think that these sagas feel cool for that reason, because you get to feel the story a little bit, like, okay, I know what the ending is. Can I make it through it? And then your opponent's like, all right, I'm telling you what the ending is. This is how the book ends. This is it. So can you stop it?
Yeah, I read ahead.
I read ahead. The last word is Scar, man. I don't know what to tell you.
So like you mentioned earlier, we did get to proxy up some of these cards, and not this one specifically, but some of the sagas, just to see how they played, because they are kind of hard to evaluate. Like, just looking at the card, it's like, okay, I know what it does, but playing with it is a different thing. It's a new type of card that we haven't seen before. And I think, Mike, you mentioned, like, off air that, like, they actually happen a lot faster than you would expect. So with this one, it's almost like, it's similar to, like, playing a Planeswalker that, like, is going to ultimate, and it's like way harder to disrupt than an actual Planeswalker, because you can't attack these or, like, throw a burn spell at it or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So unless you specifically have an enchantment removal, then it's going to happen. Yeah. So, I think, like, that's just another way that you can look at it. But yeah, this one may end up being, like, more powerful than kind of what it looks like on the surface.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Just wait till they print another Tezzeret in the core set, and there you go.
I mean, we have Tezzeret now, and you could play it with that.
There is going to be another Tezzeret from the core set. Technically 2, because he's going to be in the Planeswalker deck as well. So hey, we'll 4 Tezzerets, put something together, man.
I could also see, it could be. Have they said it's going to be a new Tezzeret? Because as a core set, it could be a reprint.
It could be a reprint,
and it could be just Agent of Bolas or the Seeker again. And Agent of Bolas makes a lot of sense for that core set.
Oh man.
So
that'd be gross, having Agent of Bolas back in standard.
Well,
with
Kaladesh. You only have it with Kaladesh for like 2.5 months.
It doesn't matter, man. So. For the 2.5 months, like, he'd be Sorcerer Supreme.
I mean, honestly, that's like totally when they should do it, right? Because that's what they've done in the past, where it's like, this is not really something that was meant to be together, but if it's only for 2 months, that's fine.
And financially speaking, like, Agent of Bolas is pretty expensive.
It's worth reprinting.
Yeah, definitely worth reprinting. I mean, that's some spec right there, but could be a pretty interesting couple of months there.
All right, let's move on here. Next up is Arcane Flight, which is it's a blue for an enchantment aura, enchanted creature has +1 and flying. And you might say, why are we talking about this? As I continue to smack the bottom of this microphone stand. But we have an auras deck, and the auras deck is already playing things like the white cartouche, which is what, Cartouche of Ambition.
I can't remember.
Or Solidarity. Cartouche Solidarity.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably just better in that deck because you want more flying. So this being a 1 mana enchantment that offers flying and +1, like, this is literally making flight irrelevant. Flight was a blue target creature or enchanted creature gains flying.
Oh man.
And flight's now...
We finally obsoleted flight.
I remember the 6th edition version of Flight had a zebra that was flying, and I remember going, why? Why is this happening? Also, the art on this, though, is amazing because they put spectral wings on a cat.
Yep, he's going to get that bird.
My cat seems very surprised that it is not falling. He's like, whoa.
Whoa! Now I can eat these birds. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I do think it's pretty. And they revealed this over a weekend by itself, so they even knew not just the art because they're like, look, cats, but also, hey, you might care about this.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
This would be a great playmat, by the way.
it would be a great playmat.
I think it might be one of the playmats. I'm not sure, but I can look that up. Go on to the next card.
If it's not, then
Dave, before you go to the next card, can we just take a second to appreciate Artificer's Assistant, which looks so much like a thieving magpie, right? Just
I mean, it's probably.
but
what
they
it's calling
trained him.
back to.
They trained him. He doesn't steal anymore. Now he helps.
Well, he might steal from other adventures.
He just
to be
tells you where
fair.
the things are so that you can steal it.
Look at him. He's got a little like shoulder pad, like necklace thing. He's holding the tool for the artificer to use. He is there to help. That is the coolest bird I've ever seen.
That's why he's an assistant.
Yeah, he's a full assistant.
Really,
His
that-
name's on the door.
That magpie really turned his life around. He's like, he went from a life of crime.
Now, and you know what's?
Now he's.
I like the fact too that he lost a little bit of toughness. He's showing his vulnerability by being an honest bird. All right, we can move on.
I can kind of percent confirm that Arcane, whatever the card we literally just talked about, Arcane
Flight.
Flight is definitely a playmat.
Yeah.
And by that, I definitely mean it's my playmat.
Ooh, so that's sweet. All right, so next card, In Bolus's Clutches. This was the fourth out of four story spotlight, which I don't know how much you want to get into the lore.
No,
but we can talk about
let's
that
not
after.
actually talk about the lore of this one for now. Just give
okay.
people some time because this is a huge story spoiler. So we'll just say Impulse.
Okay, I'm just going to say what the card does.
Yeah.
It's a 4 blue for a legendary enchantment aura.
Oh, so this is a second one technically, as another aura.
Oh, you're right. There is another legendary. You're right. Thank you. My apologies.
It's enchant permanent. You control enchanted permanent, and the enchanted permanent is legendary. So this is basically confiscate, except it is legendary. So for the purposes of historic things like that, could help.
You
I
also
guess.
can't confiscate. You can't Impulse's Clutches two different things at the same time. Where you could confiscate and then cast another confiscate. I don't know how
true.
important that is,
true.
but it's true. We don't. I don't know. This effect. When's the last time we saw just a pure effect like this?
What Lake? I guess not Lake Claim. Lake Claim is a spell, right? So
Lake Claim
Lake Claim is
an
it's
aura.
the same
So
thing.
it's
It's
seven.
just had
It's 7 mana. Okay, so we've seen it fairly recently. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't know if making things legendary matters. This is uncommon. I don't know how much play it'll see, but I do think that having something that has legendary on it that also can take planeswalkers is at least interesting.
I'm guessing this will see a lot of limited play, at least.
Oh yeah.
oh yeah, this is an uncommon as well. So
Yeah.
and the last time we had something closer to this was in what New Phyrexia? It was
You had-
Enslaved.
Oh no, and Scars of Mirrodin
Yeah,
was the one
Volition-
that's like you untap the permanent, you take it.
Was it
yeah,
Volition Reigns? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
it was
and
triple
it-
blue, 3, and then you take the permanent and you untap it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Enslaved. It was in black, but
There was Enslave as well. Yes. But Enslave only took creatures.
oh, okay.
Yeah, you mentioned taking planeswalkers. That's a pretty big game.
It is.
Like a common play that can happen is you kind of wait until they are ready to ultimate, and then you do this.
Yeah.
You get to.
I mean, that was the Zealous Conscripts play right there.
Well, this is like anything that can take planeswalker play. But that's like the cube staple right there. You're like, oh yeah, you think you got this. But yeah, cool card.
Next up is Karn's Temporal Sundering. This is 4 blue for a legendary sorcery. Target player takes an extra turn after this one. Return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Exile Karn's Temporal Sundering. So we did talk about this card a little bit already. I do think that this is a pretty castable Time Warp, which they have shied away from. All of our Time Warp variants have been mythic recently, and they have had giant hoops to jump through. I would say the last one that was like playable was probably the Miracle one, right?
No, the
Parting the water veil.
Or the Water
the
Veil
Water
didn't see
Veil.
much
Yeah,
play.
that one was pretty
but that
good,
was
too.
still what? So was it 6?
It was 6.
It was 6.
It was a mythic rare, but it
fair
was
enough.
6.
Man, I just can't remember anything all of a sudden. I was going back too far. I think though that one obviously had a win condition where if you chained them together because of this though I think the bouncing actually makes this a little more interesting. You don't think so, Dave?
I mean, when you talk about like hoops to jump through, like this has more hoops than any other time warp.
So you're saying because you have to have a target for bouncing, is what you mean?
Well, no, you just have to have,
You have
a
to have a
legendary.
legendary.
I will say though,
Or,
like
Well,
I will say
more hoops than anything else. You do have to have something to target that's non-land, or you can't cast this.
No, it's up to 1.
Oh, okay. I can't read anything. I'm done talking.
All right,
The
good.
Palooza's yours now.
Goodbye, Mike.
I will say
One
like,
wave.
just in a general sense, time warp effects work really well with planeswalkers. So like if you have a planeswalker in play or 2 or 3, and you cast this, then it's probably pretty sweet.
Well,
regardless.
Ostensibly, we might have to have a planeswalker in play to cast this. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you might just be doing the thing anyway, but I don't think I'd go out of my way to play this.
Pretty all right with Baral again. Again, making this cheaper and enabling it is just fine.
Yeah,
that
Baral-
actually is time warp.
Yeah, that is just fine.
Yeah, Baral stock and standard is going.
So that's yeah. He hits a lot of things. He makes these cheaper. He enables legendary sorceries, and he's a wizard. So it's like, oh, cool. The
well, in fact,
trifecta.
it's just like a 2-mana legend too.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
that's going to be premium.
So it's important to note that like you can bounce your own things with this as well to be effective. So if you have something that has a good ETB, then that's going to be important. I think like people are going to try it because it is a feasible, sort of time warp. And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised because we have access to like a bunch of fast mana now. We do have elves. We have Mox Amber that we'll talk about later. We have ways of enabling this to happen on like turn 4, which, yeah, that's pretty brutal. Like maybe it might not be as effective as it is later on, but I mean, having multiple turns in a row is pretty good.
Yeah, it's not the worst.
So we'll see.
All right, next up.
Back down to kind of a more just not super powerful spell, but I think just a good card in general. Merfolk Trickster. So it is a blue for a 2/2 with flash. It's a Merfolk Wizard. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. It loses all abilities until end of turn. I think it's an interesting card. Like Merfolk isn't specifically supported in this set, so it's kind of like a one-off.
I mean, it's
but I think
supported
it's a pretty
in
solid
Ixalan,
card.
though. It is a
Yeah,
drive.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not like we just didn't come from a whole entire block to 2 sets dedicated to like
Right.
Merfolk.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a sweet card.
I think this card allows certain decks to kill permanently both Hazoret and Scarab God, which is
Right.
why it's important here.
Right.
It doesn't make them 0/1s like this effect normally does.
Like
So you still,
Warkite, Marauder. or
yeah.
whatever.
So you have to have something else to do, like a removal spell or a good set of blocks. But it does the tempo of tapping it makes this card I think pretty powerful because we already had what's it, Harbinger of the Tides, which sees play in Modern still. Which it will bounce tapped creatures, but the tempo is still pretty similar. Where you want to get, this one though can make if they've held back a blocker, you can tap it down and get lethal through, which is something that Harbinger couldn't do. And then this also being able to interact with just hard to deal with creatures. I think it makes it at least interesting. Double blue I think is the tough part about this card because that's tough to cast, but it's going to be useful. It's going to be tricky.
Going to be pretty all right in Modern.
Yeah, probably definitely will
And
see
kill a
play
lot of
modern.
Tarmogoyfs with this card.
So, you gotta be careful though, because Merfolk Trickster also can accidentally make you take 13 from a Death Shadow. So,
Yeah, don't do that. That seems that's
then you can play it on your own.
Wait,
Though.
what?
The no blocks, flash us in, target Death Shadow.
No, but they have to target a creature and an opponent.
Okay, well they can do it then. Make them do it.
Does it really work that way?
Yeah, so it has text that says it gets minus X minus X what's your life total, and it's just a 13/13. So if it lost its
Yeah,
abilities, it would
okay.
just be a 13/13.
Hilarious.
Yeah, don't do that, folks.
So you have to do.
Tarmogoyf thumbs up.
So you
Death
have to-
Shadow thumbs down.
So you can't do it on your.
came out. I don't know what happened.
You can't do it on your own creature, but you can like do this to their Death Shadow and then threaten it, and then get them.
You're really reaching. Yeah.
I'm just
Whatever. Next up is the Mirari Conjecture, which is an episode of The Big Bang Theory. This is 4 and a blue for a Enchantment Saga. Act 1 says return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Act 2 is return target sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. And Act 3 is until end of turn, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. And we talked about this one a little bit. It's very flavorful, reminiscent of the Mirari itself. But this is another one of those sagas that feels like you obviously know what your opponent's doing, but you can. There's a couple of spells we have in this set alone, burn spells specifically, that you can set up the Haymaker to just finish the game.
There's a burn spell in this set that does that can do 10 damage. Your starting life total in Magic is 20, so if you double it, you die. your opponent dies.
You die in the Mirari. You die for real.
Correct. I've already had this happen to me, and it did not feel great.
Don't lie, it felt great.
It happened to me, so no.
But it still kind of felt great.
I mean, I was like, oh yeah, that's how that works. So you can do some dumb things with this. I feel like this is like almost there. I don't know. I don't know about this one. That's all I'll say.
How about this card with Karn's Temporal Sundering?
If you're casting it on Act 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's great, obviously.
I'm just saying, like,
But, yeah. In Magic Christmas Land, this card is amazing. I agree.
But I think that there are... So I keep going back to the Fall of the Titans, like, burn decks that we had, the ramp burn style decks that we had. We have Jaya's Immolating Inferno. We have Fight Fire with Fire, as we've already mentioned.
Yeah.
There are cards here that would encourage people to get to this payoff. So I think it's doable.
I don't even think you need to like have a specific combo in mind. Like you could just play this and
it's
blue black.
It's just value.
Deck. Like you just return an instant. You like just return Fatal Push or whatever. Then you get back like a card draw spell or something.
Yeah, just return of Vraska's Contempt is pretty good.
Yeah, and then under Act 3, I mean, so if you cast this on turn 5, so you're talking about like what turn 7 when this thing goes off. So you have a bunch of lands in play, and it copies all of your spells.
Yep.
Right? So you don't even... It's not even just one big thing that you could be doing.
That
you
is
could just
true.
be casting like 2 or 3 spells and then just copying them all. Like, that's absurd.
Glimpse of the copy seems fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I agree. I think, now granted, I don't know how often those decks can just tap out on 5 for this and not be just a Planeswalker, because it's comparable. But I think this card's powerful enough to do something. And I think it makes you evaluate every interesting looking spell that you could do with copies.
I can see that.
We're not talking about Naban here?
Well, so we could talk about this. So I put Fahu Dorhe, the song from The Grinch, in here. But there's a couple of wizards I didn't talk about, and I didn't know how deep we wanted to go on that, because I actually don't know if Nahu Meha is actually good enough to see play. So I thought that I would just put that on there, and if we want to talk about some of the wizards, we could, or if we don't want to, that's also fine. So what do you want to do?
Well, we get Naban, who's like a Panharmonicon for wizards. Like that's pretty sweet.
I guess the wizards have to do something cool.
I don't know what that does, but...
So here, I told Morgan, there's a couple of like the red, like common uncommon wizards that are probably pretty close. There's the 3/2 that if you have another wizard, it can deal 2 damage to an opponent. So with this, it deals 4 damage. There's the there's the Flame Tongue Kavu wizard that you're doing. So it's possible that Tribal Wizards is good enough, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the problem with wizards is like you said, I think it's close, but a lot of the spells counting you like having wizards in play, and as we saw like from Dragons of Tarkir, a lot of the cards that worked well were like you had dragons in your hand.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
They probably felt that Silumgar Scorn was too good though, and it probably was.
It was pretty disgusting.
It was busted. Let's at least then mention what these two do. How's that sound? So we cannot take too much time with them. But you mentioned the Dean of Iteration already.
Yeah, so he's a 2-mana 2/1 legendary human wizard. If a wizard enters the battlefield under your control, causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger. That ability triggers an additional time.
It also doubles up your Snapcaster. So I guess if you wanted to Snapcaster double. So,
and this affects things that like would affect if any creature, like if something like if a creature enters the battlefield, do X. So this would still cause that to do it if a wizard did it as well, which I think is important. It's not just like wizards having to have the effect on them to trigger. It's anything that would cause a
It's like, for example, like if you have like a champion of the parish in play,
yeah,
and then you cast a wizard, since it is also a human, you'll get double
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Even though it's
And,
not
and,
a
that, and
specific
that's cool. I don't know.
I don't think like that necessarily sets it like above anything, but I think it was an important like layer to point out.
It does work with the next one though, the one I had originally put on.
Naru Miha,
I made so many jokes about it. It's too hard to say the actual name.
Wizard Master.
Nope, Master Wizard.
Well, whatever.
Like, so that's because it's like head of the school, because it's Baron Master Wizard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Master Wizard.
Two generic blue for a 3/3 legendary creature, human wizard. It has flash. When it enters the battlefield, you can copy target insert a sorcery spell you control, and you can choose new targets for the copy. And then other wizards you control get +1/+1. So it's a wizard lord, but its ability only copies things that you've played. That
That's
means you have
lame.
to have cast that spell and have the mana to cast this too.
Yeah, it's lame. Boo.
I do think it's lame, but I think in general, I think this card is actually pretty good. Like, just 4 mana, 3/3 flash that like pumps all your other creatures. Like, it's not that bad. Like,
And don't get, like, if you, so this is why I said like it's close. It seems like, because if you have like Naban in play, for example, so at 5 mana you can bolt your opponent, cast this,
yeah,
make 2 more copies of bolt, right, and then have a wizard lord. Like that seems disgusting to me. But at the same time, I don't know. There's a lot of cool wizards. I don't know if the deck is there or not.
right. I don't think you necessarily like need to rely on this copying anything ever. You know, it's kind of like maybe late game you do something with that.
Sure.
But I think in general, it's just going to be a 4 mana 3/3 flash that pumps your other team. You know, pumps the rest of your team, which is probably good enough.
It's probably fine.
But if there is a wizard deck, it's probably going to want to play this.
That's probably true. So, I do want to at least mention that Opt is in this set again. We talked about it has much better art, so please play this version of Opt. I think the order still goes Invasion Opt, Dominaria Opt. It's probably Invasion Opt, F&M Promo Dominaria Opt, Dominaria Opt. Like Invasion Opt that went through the wash in the back, in the back of your jeans,
Oh, come on.
and then Ixalan Opt.
I didn't know this became a ranking podcast.
I mean, we've been a ranking podcast for a long time. High ranking.
Anyway, yeah, Opt is back. Not
But
really back.
I think the next card is another reprint
Yeah,
that
you know what's also back? Syncopate.
Ooh.
Syncopate, it's X and a blue instant counter target spell unless its controller pays X. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it in its owner's graveyard. I'm actually not sure if this one's going to be good enough, but I think it is worth mentioning. Like, when was the last time we saw like an X counter spell?
It was Clash of Wills,
Yep.
and it saw play.
Magic Origins.
Clash of Wills saw play.
I played it.
Syncopate saw play when it was
Syncopate
in
is on
RTR.
play. Syncopate with Brawl's really good.
Very true.
Oh my god.
But Syncopate is good. Syncopate will see play.
Yeah, it'll
100%.
definitely see play.
I think the thing that's awkward about this though is like the blue decks want to play Gear Hulk, and this is not.
That is true.
I
That's
don't
true.
necessarily know if you have to do that anymore.
Play Gear Hulk?
I don't think both approach lists that I've seen from prominent writers in Star City, neither of them had Gear Hulk in their list.
Yeah, but that's not the only version of that. You control.
I'm not
like,
saying
Blue
it
Black
is.
probably still wants it. But,
Sure.
but yeah, I agree. I think Syncopate's going to see a lot of play still. And if we're going to rank art again, this new Dominaria art is pretty sweet. So I would go Dominaria Odyssey, then RTR.
Yeah. But yeah, I think anytime that we've seen this type of spell in the format recently, it sees play just because it's versatile. It can counter, both things, and like especially early on in the format where people will not play around it and just like play real hard to syncopate for one, and that feels great. And I think the exile clause is relevant.
Mm-hmm.
The graveyard is relevant in the current format we're in, and it was relevant when Syncopate was live in RTR block. So that's why I think this has a lot of things going for it. And then you can play with Baral, and it's real gross. So
Yeah, I think Syncopate's good. We are going to skip Tempest Djinn because I think out of unfortunately all of that cycle of triple mana costed monocolored creatures, Tempest Djinn is not great. But I guess if you technically when you play it on turn 3, if you have 3 islands, then you have made your own. Oh shoot! I can't think of the name all of a sudden.
We might as well talk about it. We're already kind of.
I just don't really want to. That's all I want to say about it.
We're just gonna be like.
You can make your own Serendipity Freet, I guess. It's a 0/4 that gets +1/+1 for each basic island you control and has flying. But you have to be playing a bunch of basic islands for this to be good, and I don't know if there's a draw to that, unfortunately.
Yeah, this card would have been dope in mono blue control, mono blue devotion.
Yeah, mono blue devotion for sure. Yeah,
Bring it back in modern.
Bring him back.
But what I do want to talk about is Tetsuka Umezawa Fugitive, because I'm in love with this card. This is a blue and a generic for a legendary creature human rogue. It is a 1/3, and it says creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. There's some flavor stuff here that's awesome because the Umezawa family is entangled with the killing of Bolus the first time. So the reason he's a fugitive is just like, I really don't want to be found out that I'm like alive. Like this bloodline's still here.
Hey, you remember the Elder Dragon you killed? Well, you didn't do a great job with it, and they're back. So yeah, if you kill someone and they come back, they probably won't like you very much, as it turns out.
well, it wasn't him. I mean,
In her.
Oh, sorry.
But I want to talk just because like blue gets a couple now of 2-drop of these legends we talked about. We have Brawl, we have the Dean here that we just talked about, and now Tetsuga Umezawa, which I think blue is the one that definitely gets the best crack at making some of the legendary sorceries and like things like the Mox Amber work. But I love what this card does. Dave put it into his cube, and
Oh man.
Me and our friend Keller, the friend of the show, were both saying, "Oh, we want to get this." Oh, pack one, opened it. Pack one, drafted. Oh, just the sickest deck with it. So many creatures that just have one or just one power or toughness.
Yeah, somewhere in the mix.
And then so in Cube, I got to play it with Oketra's Monument, which made me want to do that in Standard. And now I've been brewing because this card with Oketra's Monument is it's so nice.
Yeah.
So. But I think this card's pretty interesting because there's a lot of like X1s in this format right now, and there's things like I'm gonna forget the name of it now. The vampire that I love so much.
Danto Vanguard.
There you go, Danto Vanguard, the True Name Nemesis. Now becomes unblockable.
Nemesis.
That was like a real True Name
It's
Nemesis.
really there. It's growing up, and I think that there's a lot of cool cards like that. This card can surprisingly just win the game out of nowhere because all of a sudden your board is unblockable. It works really good with tokens. I mean, there's a number of token strategies in this set. I think this card is deceptively powerful.
And an auto include in any
Yeah.
common cube.
Also true.
In case you're wondering. Yeah.
It's pretty disgusting.
Real good. All right. We have yet another saga. And this one, I think, has the sweetest art.
Still my background.
Yeah. Time of Ice. So acts 1 and 2 are the same. It's, it costs 3 and a blue for a saga. Tap target creature an opponent controls. It doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control Time of Ice. Then Act 3, return all tapped creatures to their owner's hands. Says counts both, the ones that you tap down. Counts your own if you have a way to, I guess, tap your own creature in your draw step or whatever, whenever that goes off. Yeah. It's pretty cool. Like, this is a good way to kind of slow the game down. And I actually played against this one last night in Cube, and like definitely impacted how the game was played. Like, I was playing like a black and red aggressive deck, and I just didn't want to attack. The turn before this was going to go off, just because returning my creatures wasn't a big deal, but I just didn't want to have to rebuild my whole board. You know what I mean? So actually affects like not only the creatures that are being tapped down, but like even other creatures. Like, your opponent's not really going to want to recast everything all the time. So I don't know about constructed for this one. It's probably too expensive, but I expect this to be like a really annoying limited card to play against for sure.
I think it's pretty close to constructed if you have something that's tempo-y or even if you're just trying to buy some time in a control shell. This is an interesting card because it really causes your opponent to make either commit to the board quickly to get around it or to stop attacking for at least a turn.
Yeah.
And plus you're locking down their biggest guy. I think that's at least interesting. But it could be nothing, but I want to see this in decks and I want to see it in foil.
Yeah.
So, next up we have Unwind, which is 2 generic and a blue for which is an instant, which says counter target non-creature spell, untap up to 3 lands. So this is negate that costs 1 more mana, but you do get the rewind clause because it's Joria, the one casting it, so she knows all those cool tricks.
You know what this is good with? Brawl.
Yeah, no joke.
You even gain a mana.
There we go. We're figuring it out. All right.
So we figured out Baral is just
By this point in time in the podcast,
yellow.
if you haven't bought a playset of Baral just for standard, I don't know what you've been doing with your time, but not spending it well, clearly.
Here's the thing. I don't know if most decks are in the market for paying more for negate, but if you want to keep mana up consistently, then this card lets you do some pretty gross things. I know that Rewind really didn't see much in the way of play the last time it was printed, but it has been very powerful in the past. So
we are getting more instant speed card draw. I've noticed. So, like, I still think negate is better overall. However, if you're playing more like instant speed things or things to do at the end of your opponent's turn, this might be something you would look at least to be like, okay, well, this allows me to both counter a spell and also do something else. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's fair. Let's finish. Or no, we have two more. Sorry. Let's say one was double blue. Almost.
Wizard's Retort. It's this set's strictly better cancel. Wizard's Retort. 1 blue instant counter target spell. Oh look, it costs 1 less to cast if you control a wizard. So if you have a wizard in play, it's just
This
counterspell.
is a Baral flavor non-bow because Baral already makes the cost one less.
That's true. Yeah,
you
can't,
still do
can't make
get-
it cost like -1.
You can still loot
Colorless.
though. That's still probably pretty
you can
good.
still loot.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about this card. If wizards are good, then this card's good, but it's already playable as is if you just have a few random wizards. So, if you just have Baral in your deck, then this is probably already close to playable anyways, so I don't know. Before we go to the last card, I do want to mention, if you have not seen the card Weight of Memory, the card is not worth your time. But looking at the art is sweet, and if you have wondered why Karn looks all weird, don't worry, he still looks like himself in this card. But it's Karn and Joria and Teferi talking, and they seem like, oh, hey guys, it's been a while, so all these people died. Oh, and Mirrodin kind of got eaten by Phyrexians. So.
Also, I gave the Phyrexians a new Plum Plane?
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Karn.
Yeah, Yawgmoth's kind of a joke now. Have you met Elishnorn?
Have you met Elishnorn?
Anyways.
She's got 4 other friends. Don't worry about it.
One of them's kind of like a big spider with like a woman on top of it. It's this Urza was a head for a while, and it's still the most scary thing I've ever seen in my life.
The red one's all right, though.
The red one's alright though.
Her best kind of
He
care.
just vibrates loudly. Anyways, the last card in blue is Zahid, Djinn of the Lamp. This is 4 generic blue for a 5/6 flyer. And it has an alternate cost. You may pay 3 generic in a blue and tap an untapped artifact you control rather than pay the spell's mana cost. So this is your sort of, was it Mahatma Djinn? Is that the one? Sibilant Spirit?
Mahamodi.
I don't know. The
I don't know.
6 mana 5/6 flyer. But the alternate cost on this is pretty interesting.
Yeah, you gotta rub the lamp, man.
Yeah, it's cool. Did you ever read the flavor text on this? I do as I please, little mortal. Do go on with your wishes, though. They amuse me to no end. It's like, yeah, sure, make a wish. You're gonna mess it up. I think it's interesting that we have a couple of really interesting artifact-centric cards, and it sort of encourages you to go try out like the Metalwork Colossus style decks, the Grixis Improvise style decks, and this card essentially has Improvise, and now you have another giant flyer that doesn't die to Fatal Push, that doesn't die to Glorybringer in combat. This is bigger than Lyra Dawnbringer, and for 4 mana 5/6 flyers, even if it's vanilla, that's a big creature that early. So I think this, if that deck sees an improvement, I think this card definitely goes in there.
Yep.
This card is awesome.
You ain't never had a friend like him.
I love just like I love the callback to Mahamodi because without the alternate cost, it's just Mahamodi. Just in the stats.
Sorry, I said it wrong,
cost.
my guys there. I apologize.
Yeah, jeez. But you've already well established that talking is not your strong suit today.
That's true. I can't do any of it. So
I think it's great, just like top down design too.
oh yeah,
It's just like one of those sweet how have you never had a Djinn that you rub the lamp
that does this. I don't know. I mean, it's a good idea, but it's kind of out of the box.
Like this had to be like a Richard
out
Garfield.
of the lamp.
Out of the lamp.
Yeah, this had to be a Richard Garfield special,
I hope so.
Right?
I hope so. I'm sorry. He was sharing individual cards too, which one we're gonna get to in the next color, and I feel like he's having a blast. So
Yeah.
so what do we think about blue?
I think it's very similar to white. Got a lot of good role players like I think like maybe it's not as like on your face like powerful, but I think it got some interesting cards to kind of play with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think there's a lot of cards that like play on the board.
Yes, I think that's kind
like
of interesting.
Creatures, sagas, you know, some good spells too. But I think like the more exciting cards are, you know, what's on the board there.
I enjoy the build arounds. I enjoy like the Antiquities War and the Mirari Conjecture as things that blue decks that could go a specific route if they want to. That makes me happy. So, let's move on to black.
All right, so first card in black is the Doomblade of the set. Cast down. So cast down is 1 in a black instant, destroy target non-legendary creature. Not as good as it would have been before the set, because there are a lot more legends in the format, but I think still pretty good. It is still awkward that it doesn't kill, Hazoret and Scarab God. Can't even target them. But I don't know. I think this is, I guess it's not really the Doomblade of the set, right? It's more of like the ultimate price of the set. Where it's like, they can only print this if they had like 1 million legends.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, otherwise it'd just be too good. I think it'd be interesting to see like how this plays in format like Modern though, where there's like a lot less legends floating around, or to worry about. It still kills Tarmogoyfs and stuff like that, but it can also kill like some of the larger threats like Gurmag Angler, which can be a little bit more problematic.
There are still some pretty good ones that it misses. Brawl, clearly we've already noted Brawl's supreme ascendance due to Dominaria, and then Tasigur is a big one in Modern that it does not kill very effectively, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, like this kind of fits perfectly into the not quite Doomblade cycle. And it'll be of a varying power level. It is super annoying that it's not something that kills Scarab God, or like I mean, obviously it doesn't kill Hazoret, but like that, I think like that's pretty unfortunate because those are still some of the biggest threats that we have. And now that we have Seal Away, like Scarab God is kind of like the big elephant in the room of the format. That's still kind of doesn't really have a thing that stops it yet.
I mean, you have Contempt, and you have like Cast Out Nixon's Binding, and there are things to deal with it.
All at 4 mana. Yep, I agree.
Yeah, 4 mana for the 5/5. The 5 mana
you're
card.
Still up on that mana exchange, right?
So
yeah,
I think like you'll see this. I think it'll be fine for standard. I think this card is it's fine. We'll have to kind of see like how the format shapes up. Like, are the main threats going to be legendary? Because if so, then it's probably trash. But maybe it's just a sideboard card against like the more aggressive decks or something. But I think it's a lot more interesting for Modern. Like the decks that would play like Go for the Throat or something, for example, because that card is just garbage against like Affinity. But this actually, but this actually
had that card in hand when they cast Wormcoil Engine.
Yeah. So this has applications, in those spots. So
yeah, I agree.
Fringe Modern player, but
fair enough. Next up is Dark Bargain. This is 3 generic and a black for an instant. Look the top 3 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and the other into your graveyard. Dark Bargain deals 2 damage to you. So this is like a mixture of a couple different cards: Sign in Blood, Read the Bones.
What was the 4 mana one that had Sorin on it? I can't remember. It was
that Sorin on it.
This is the one from Portal 3 Kingdoms, right? Ambition's Cost.
Yeah, draw 3, lose 3. I know which one you're talking about, but I don't remember what it is.
Yeah, it was 4 mana as well, and it was like, look at the top 4, take 2, bin 2, or something like that. I can't remember, but I don't think it was instant speed. I think it was sorcery.
No, I think out of all the things, the consistent thing here is that is actually a sorcery speed effect in black most of the time.
Yeah.
This being an instant is a pretty big deal. There've already been a couple of like white-black style control decks that we've seen, things that are playing like Spectral Procession, sometimes the tokens decks, that they might want something they can hold up. And this is kind of interesting. If you're playing blue-black, you're probably still just playing either like hieroglyphic illumination or
Glimmer.
Glimmer, as we already mentioned. But in colors where you have black in addition to things. We played the red-black control deck for a little bit, the mid-rangey deck. This is the kind of card that I'd be interested in that lets you filter a little bit, but also there's enough things in this format still, in Standard in general, where putting that one card into your graveyard
is irrelevant.
It might be almost as good as drawing that card.
Yeah.
So, like, if I do this on a turn and I don't have time to cast, say, something of Wits. I can't remember what it is. I can't remember any
Champion
names.
Wits.
Thank you. And then but I can't cast it, but I want to put it in the graveyard. Well, if I'm already on 4 mana and I have other things to do and I get to just put a Champion of Wits in my graveyard off of this, like, oh.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now, granted, that's the best case scenario, but I think this being instant is pretty spicy.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Black Glimmer.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Probably not as good as Glimmer overall, but like if you're not playing blue, I think it's fine.
Man, the flavor text on that one's insane too. Definitely this creepy creature in a swamp trying to sell all his old goods. But he says, I have pustules of the great Radadrabic, very cheap. No, surely you want to pick a tincture of Nevinrall's pulverized remains, genuine. Nevinrall as in of Nevinrall's discs.
Yeah.
So that's pretty sweet.
By the way, on Reddit, they were talking about this card, and they decided that person's name is Bark Dargans, so it's Bark Dargans, Dark Bargains. Which I adopt. That is fact.
It's so good.
So,
all right. Now, Dave, you have the next card.
Yeah,
I went and did some.
I know.
Okay, so I'm just making sure.
I'm gonna go. All right. So I'm gonna go with 6-time NBA champion Demon Lord Belzenlock.
that's really good.
Oh my god. Oh man.
He costs 4 black. He's a legendary creature, Elder Demon. Now we don't know if he's a real Elder Demon or if he's just saying he's an Elder Demon. 6/6 flying trample. There's a lot of text on this guy. When it enters the battlefield, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. Then put that card into your hand. If the card's converted mana cost is 4 or greater, repeat this process. Demon Lord, Belzenlock. I don't have enough.
I gave you a whole list.
I
gave you lists. Demon Lord Belzenlock, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men.
Deals 1 damage to you for each card put into your hand this way.
Yeah, I think the Darth Belzenlock is actually a pretty sweet card. I don't know. I guess I want to see how well that trigger really works when you cast it. Because if you're consistently drawing 2 or 3 cards off of this, then I think it's pretty great. But if it's only going to be just 1 or 2, I don't know. Maybe that's not that big of a difference. I don't know. It's probably good enough, but
I think like even just 1 is fine. Like it's not.
It's fine, but so if it only draws 1, then is it worth playing this over Gearhulk? Now, granted, you might play this in a deck that can't cast Gearhulk, so that's obviously very possible. But I don't know. I wonder if Demon Lord Belzenlock Pendragon is really going to break through. I hope so, because I want to play this game for the rest of my life.
I don't think Starfleet Captain Belzenlock is good enough. In my opinion.
Oh man, I don't know. I think Demon Lord Belzenlock of the Riders of Rohan is probably in a tough situation. But maybe when some of these Gearhulks and these other big drops that we've had rotate out, then it has a chance. So I would hate to see the big bad of this set not see any play.
Yeah, poor Pope Belzenlock.
That's so blasphemous. Oh my gosh.
You went there.
You don't know what he's the Pope of.
Oh, that's true.
He's definitely the Pope of the Cabal. Let's be real here.
Oh man, well, I think that's all we have to say about El Presidente Belzenlock. So, I really enjoyed that way too much. Next up is Divest. This is a black for a sorcery. Target player reveals his or her, or reveals their hand. Sorry, I went back to their old wording.
This is the new wording.
You choose an artifact or creature card from it. That player discards that card. So we have another ostracized variant. We have one of these we have Harsh Scrutiny in the format. Harsh Scrutiny lets you scry one, but only takes creatures. This lets you take creatures and artifacts. I still think this misses the mark.
Yeah, I no.
The art is horrific.
It's like a little, what is that? A fairy?
Well, it looks like it's something from like Shadowmoor. This is what it really looks like to me. It does mention Fallen Empires, though.
Flitter sprites is what that is. It's a flitter sprite.
God, put some pants on, man. I don't know.
Put some pants on. Get out of my brain and put some pants on.
If I play this card, I'm going to have to alter it to have little blue jeans on it. Make them a never nude.
All right.
No, I think that all the black discards that like get rid of a creature or get rid of a I think like that the reason they miss the mark so frequently is because black obviously typically has a way to deal with them, has a way, like artifacts is different. They don't that's something that is not typically that realm for like to deal with it on the board. But with creatures, it's like normally that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for non-creatures, and that's why Duress is obviously so powerful as a sideboard card. So, like maybe you might like if for some reason like the Hazoret becomes like this unbeatable threat for black, which it isn't. We already have Rescus Contempt, but like that's where you see those corner cases. But it's just too narrow when there's already better ways to combat the things you're trying to take from the hand anyway.
I think WotC's recognized this too, because for a while all of the ones we've mentioned were uncommons. Like the rest is a common, but all the ones that take creatures have been uncommon. This is a common.
Yeah.
So even WotC's like, all right, we were wrong for this. Next up,
Dreadshade. So this is
Judge Dreadshade.
Sure.
Okay, let's just make sure.
Triple black, 3/3, shade. You can pay a black to give it +1/+1 till end of turn. I feel like once upon a time this card would have been really awesome. Now it's just kind of sweet.
Shades are always tricky for me because those effects have always been pretty held in check. And when I was playing a lot of standard in high school, Nantuko Shade was the cornerstone of the mono black control deck where you could play Cabal Coffers and do this. And now I know what you're thinking. Isn't there a Cabal Coffers in this set? No, it's actually terrible.
It's real bad.
Not. But the fact that this is already a 3/3, so if you ostensibly cast on turn 3 with 3 swamps, then your next turn you could be attacking with a creature that threatens to be a 7/7. It makes it pretty hard on in a board where, again, depending on the removal spells you might have, where if your creatures aren't going to match up with this. So this just reads as unblockable that pumps extra damage in for a little bit. But the mana commitment here makes you have to really be playing into that. So I don't know.
I've played against this card. I have watched my opponent pump it up to a 6/6, and I have cast the Sealed Away, and it made them feel very bad.
That's fair. I mean, that's going to happen anytime you can pump mana in. That doesn't necessarily make it bad, but
I think there's enough in the format for that they can combat it. Like probably against like a green deck, like you might have a hard time. And later on, if you're playing like a green red deck, but if you're playing like black or white against this, then I don't know if it really it feels like it just doesn't quite. Make up for itself, you know
That's
what I
fair.
mean? Maybe late game, but then again, like, who says you're going to be around long enough to really have a payoff? Like, this is the best shade that we've seen in a long time, and it's still probably not like good enough. Again, though, hey, if this was around with Mono Black Devotion,
Oh man,
choice. Nick those would have been great with this card. that's the true Cabal Coffers right there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you mentioned Nantuko Shade, and I think that was like really the first playable shade, right? Like. And that for the time was, a 2-mana 2/1 that had the single black pump.
Yeah.
And that was really good with Cabal Coffers. And then when it got reprinted, you didn't have Cabal Coffers the second time, and it saw like zero play.
Yeah, it was not as.
So-
we also just had more efficient removal spells with it too. So
Right. But I think the real power there is Cabal Coffers, like as a way to just really supercharge it. I think like there was a time in Magic, in history where like maybe if you could like ritual this out on turn 1, it just like gives you like a quick clock, like that would have been great. But I think threats and answers have both kind of come a long way since then, and I think it's going to fall short. But I think it's a sweet card.
I wish this
Some
was
sweet
just
artwork.
like a Spectre of some persuasion, like not
That would
necessarily
make it better.
Not necessarily the
If it
Spectre.
had flying, yes, it'd be really good.
Yeah, not necessarily like the Spectre that we got that's a legendary creature, but just like, I don't know, figure out the power toughness ratio on that, give it flying, and then like the Spectre ability.
yeah, but we had that. When we had Devotion, we had the hybrid 2/3. Like that doesn't feel interesting to me. I don't know.
It feels more playable.
I mean, it's possible, but
This doesn't feel as playable. I agree with you. It's not as interesting, but it's also still like another iconic thing.
it's true. I think Shade's an iconic thing, though. We just haven't seen one in a while.
Just always so bad.
Yeah, but it's fine. Sometimes you got not throw Shade. I don't know.
You could have a legendary Shade. We've seen Ishan's Shade, but you could have like flip flopped those two and probably made like a playable constructed card and still like a really cool throwback card.
All right, fine. If you like Dread Shade, don't listen to all this.
If you're a Dread Shade supporter, then we're sorry.
All right, next up is the Eldest Reborn. This is another saga, four generic and a black. Act 1 is each opponent sacks a creature or planeswalker. Act 2 is each opponent discards a card. And Act 3 is put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And I'm gonna quote what David said about this card was, I don't know, but it's a 3-for-1, so it has to be worth looking for, right? And we've got to play this a little bit, again, now in Cube, but I think the speed at which these move, this card I think feels pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think like the fact that it lets you reanimate a planeswalker, like you could take your opponent's planeswalker that got killed.
Yeah, by this card.
Have we seen a card that can even do that at this point?
Take an opponent's planeswalker? Oh, man.
There was another card in the set that's similar.
Technically, Sorin could take your opponent's planeswalkers.
Yeah, with an ultimate.
Okay.
Okay.
Just saying, technically.
No, you're right, but like...
there's another card we're going to talk about that also does that.
Okay, fair
in
enough.
the same set. but
no, it is beyond this, it's not very common to see.
Yeah. And this being an uncommon is just it's wild. It's wild to me.
Now, I will say that a lot of, at least especially with the new rules, planeswalkers may not be in the graveyard as often, because I see them mostly getting exiled by Vraska's contaminated enchantments.
That
Very
is
true.
But I think this is certainly interesting, and make, especially as a 5-drop, it can make the Act 2 is surprisingly, like, the discard is a little interesting, because they're probably not going to have a huge hand at that point, depending on how the game's going. So they may have to make a real choice, and they can't feed into Act 3. So I think this is sweet. And the art on this is unbelievable. This is the Eldest Reborn is the story of Nicol Bolas regaining his physical form during Time Spiral. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, before that he was just a ghost.
He's a ghost.
Alrighty. Before we get to the next card, we have breaking news. Matt Nass just won the GP with Croc-Clan Ironworks Con.
Oh,
so
boy.
I know this is breaking news for us, but by the time people listen to this, they're going to already know.
You'll hear this on Tuesday, and you already know.
Yeah. So, yeah, good for him. Yeah, back-to-back GPs, top 8s with that deck, and he took it down this time. So
Yeah, there you go.
cool. All right, next card is Josu Vess, Lich Knight. This is a pretty sweet card. It's a 2 black for a legendary creature, Zombie Knight. It's a 4/5 menace. It has kicker of 5 and a black.
Which is this the first card we've had that had kicker in our
I
review?
think so.
All right.
Yeah, we skipped over the Into the Royal reprint.
That's true.
It's called what Blink.
Lots of eyes.
Lots
And
of
the art
eyes.
has lots
It's
of
just the
eyes.
hilarious art. Yeah.
I did hear. I saw somebody ask on some form of social media, like essentially like, "LOL, why isn't it just Into the Royal?" Because the Royal was a very specific actual place,
The Royals. Yeah, for Zendikar.
and for Zendikar, like it is on that plane, so that is why we're not going into the Royal.
Hey, just be happy that now in your Pauper decks you could play both
Yes,
if you wanted to. But back to Josu here. If he's kicked, he enters the battlefield with 8 2/2 black Zombie Knight creature tokens with menace. So he brings the army. Army in a can here. But yeah, it's a pretty sweet card. Like, on its own, just 4 mana, 4/5 menace. Not bad. And if you get to they're talking real late game, 10 mana here, but yeah. Bring the party.
I think that again I'm going to go back to sort of these dirtily black-green decks, these Mastermind acquisition decks that were sort of looking for win conditions. This seems like the perfect tutor target for that, where you've ramped up to 1 million mana, but you don't have anything to do, and you're like, man, what can I get? Oh yeah, let's go get the army. Let's bring the whole military home. So yeah, I think this card, like, you can just play it on 4, and it can be kind of hard to deal with, and then it's one of those things that as the game goes on, that's what's sweet about Kicker, is that it makes your game, your cards do such interesting things later, and this reminds me of Army of the Damned in that same sense. So, I do also want to mention, if you look at Josu Vest's armor, especially his headdress, like his helmet, looks a lot like Liliana, like his sister's. Actually has like the same sort of like crowning going on, with some bolus-esque or horns going on, but definitely you can see the similarities, which I think is pretty cool. Because if the whole point of making Josu Vest a leech was from First Admiral Belzenlock was to taunt her, then yeah, why not?
We're gonna go with the Troll Liliana outfit.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Oh man. Next up is Knight of Malice, which we referenced before, so we'll talk quickly. It's a generic in a black for a 2/2 human knight. Has first strike, hexproof from white, and then as long as any player controls a white permanent, it gets +1/+0. So we mentioned the knights before, and this is that black payoff. And this knight and the white knight whereas before they didn't really work together, now they do sort of work together. They see each other, they pump each other. And again, if you're playing black-white knights, then this is if all your 2-drops are essentially 3/2s with first strike, that's not a bad place to start. So.
Mike, you can take the next one. I think you have more to say about this next card than I do.
So the next one was one of the ones I was mentioning that was spoiled by Richard Garfield, and I just have to enjoy that he got to do his own callback here. And this card is crazy. This is Leech's Mastery. 3 generic.
Is it leech?
Liches.
Or
I don't know.
lich?
I'm sorry. I say leech a lot.
I know.
apologize.
Every time you say it, it sounds like you're saying leash.
It's not leash.
Leash's mastery.
Like leeches, like suck your blood.
Yeah,
Lick is mastery.
Look at Tongue's mastery.
3 generic black for a legendary enchantment. It has hexproof, and that black doesn't get hexproof, but this gets hexproof. So you can't lose the game. Cool. Whenever you gain life, draw that many cards. Whenever you lose life, for each 1 life you lost, exile a permanent you control or a card from your hand or graveyard. When a Lich's Mastery leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. So you get to a fun minigame here where you want to make sure you have enough cards in your hand and in play and in the battlefield, or in the graveyard, so that when you take damage, you don't have to sacrifice this enchantment. As long as you don't have to sacrifice this enchantment, you can't lose the game. That is really interesting to me. And I when I saw this, I thought, like, okay, this is crazy. I don't know. But people are brewing with it. And I've seen it now firsthand. And I can officially tell you that I've lost a game of Magic where my opponent was tapped out to cast this card and then killed me. Now, they were playing Aetherflux Reservoir. And then they had a bunch of 1 and 0 cost artifacts with a spell, like a cost reduction effect in play. And the first one, they gained 2 life, and they drew 2 cards. And then they gained 3 life and drew 3 cards. And then so on and so on. And then they dealt 50 to me, but then they had to pause for a second as we tried to figure out if they could, in fact, exile and discard 50 damage worth of cards to make sure they didn't lose.
Pay 50 life?
Correct. And they successfully could because they drew their library.
Yep.
And killed me. And I was stunned. I was like, what? Like, what did we just do? So, yeah, I don't know if that's really going to happen too often, but I do think that this card is pretty powerful. The version I saw playing this also had things like, Consulate's Authority, is that right? The one you mentioned,
Authority of the Consuls.
Authority of the Consuls. I got that backwards. But essentially, every time then a creature came into play under your control, because you want to attack them so that they lose life, well, then they gain a life and they draw a card. Yeah. No, that's not great. I don't like that. Don't do that.
I don't like that.
Yeah, this is just another sweet like top-down design card where it's like another callback to like the old Lich that was in beta, alpha beta. Just a new spin on that. And like you said, yeah, potentially pretty powerful. Like, has hexproof, so you can't take this out by traditional means. You're gonna have to get creative.
Jamoka's command him.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get creative to get rid of this thing. 6 mana though. I don't know if it's like ultimately gonna see constructed play, or be a serious constructed, playable card, but definitely sweet.
The power level is there, but it is kind of shaky. We also have things like River's Rebuke in Standard that makes a real bad time for this deck.
Basically, yeah, like if this becomes a thing, like
yeah,
probably
bounce it. Oh well, game's over.
No, thank you. Please no. Hour of Revelation is another one.
That is true. But Urza's Ruinous Blast, won't do it.
You can play those both together.
So yeah, I don't know either, and I think like you could see Hexproof here and think, oh, this is gross, but I think this is a cool take on breaking the color pie. This card needed something like that, and Indestructible probably wasn't it. So I like it.
Yeah. All right, next one. I think this was the actual first saga we saw.
This was, yes.
Yeah. Phyrexian Scriptures, 2 black. Act 1, you put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. That creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. Act 2, destroy all non-artifact creatures. And Act 3, exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. So if this sees constructed play, it's basically going to be as like a Damnation with Suspend, essentially. Can be a little awkward if your opponent has artifact creatures since it doesn't kill them, but you can kind of...
Sorry, everybody. That was
Hey, dog.
That's my puppy losing his mind because my wife is home.
I mean, you can possibly build your deck in a way where you have like more artifact creatures and it doesn't hit your own things. So I don't know. Yeah, this one it's pretty specific, but I do think it's pretty powerful for like the effect that it has.
I think that just the fact that the second part of it is essentially a Wrath. Now, granted, it's a Wrath your opponent sees coming, as we mentioned, but and that you can play into it if you want to. Like, most of the time, if you're going to play a Wrath effect on turn 4 or 5, you don't want to put any creatures in play, but you can. So, I think this is deceptively powerful, and does a lot of work. It's still awkward that even though it has the Exile clause, it's not going to interact the way you want with the Scarab God. I know we've said that a lot, but that little cleanup at the end is pretty nice, and I think it's fairly interesting. I also think that this is the card where, if you wanted to get real fun, if you needed to, the red creature you already alluded to, Morgan, where you can skip ahead.
Yeah.
You can play that. You can play this, target that, make it an artifact, and then attack and blow up the world. So, I don't know how common that would be, but it sounds sweet to me. So, yeah, I think Standard's the only place that has a chance to see any play, but I think it will.
Yeah, it is something that there will be like scenarios where it's not as effective as you want it to be, where your opponent is also playing artifact creatures, and that probably feels bad. But I think like it is powerful enough to get there. I mean, its rarity is mythic, so it's got the powers there.
All right, let's move on here. I will say I want to make a quick mention that Rat Colony exists.
Yeah.
Which is a rat that you can play any number of them in your deck, and the flavor text implies that essentially wherever they just left Phyrexian corpses on the ground, rats were like, "Oh yeah, this is for us." And that was a long time ago, so I don't know how Dominaria isn't just like a swarming plane of rats. Just like you planeswalk there and you look down and you go, "What is that? The ground is moving." Oh, it's Rat Colony. Anyways, though, next up we're going to talk about Settle the Score, which is 2 black for a sorcery, exile target creature, put 2 loyalty counters on a planeswalker you control. Now, this is already going to be fighting for space with Vraska's Contempt immediately. It being another card that says exile is pretty nice. If you're budget-minded, you're going to feel pretty happy about this because you don't have to spend that. But I do think that there are scenarios where... I should also point out that this is a story card, but we won't talk, again, spoilers for this. But that... I don't know, there's not a lot of effects that do this where they interact specifically with planeswalkers,
Right.
put loyalty counters on them, and being able to take out a creature that's threatening your planeswalker and possibly ultimate a lot earlier is kind of scary, actually. This seems like you would play it in a certain deck that wants to have this effect, but when this effect is good, it's possibly backbreaking.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of planeswalkers in this format that exist that if they get to ultimate, it's game over. Like they create an emblem that you cannot interact with that'll definitely kill you.
Chandra,
Yeah,
Teferi.
Chandra's the one that definitely comes to mind, and yeah, it's something that obviously is competing for space with like Vraska's Contempt, which is pretty versatile. But sometimes this might be something you play for budgetary concerns, or because you just got some good synergies with it.
I don't have anything else to add to that.
Fair enough. Moving on.
Let's see. Torgar, Famine Incarnate?
I don't think you said that right. You can't say it questionably. It's got to be Torgar.
Torgar! Famine Incarnate. This is 6 black for a legendary creature avatar, 7/6. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each creature sacrificed this way. And then when it enters the battlefield, up to one target player's life total becomes half their starting life total, rounded down. So you could potentially cast this for 2 mana if you sack 3 creatures, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to note that you can kind of take your opponent. I mean, and I guess if you're not playing Commander or something like that, like it's just basically set somebody's life total to 10, right? So you can either take your opponent down to 10, you can put yourself up to 10 if you're below that. So, I don't know, like cards that require you to sacrifice. Well, I guess it doesn't require you to sacrifice creatures, but they end up not being that good.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, but we do have this deck that's current in the format called tokens, specifically, white/black/green tokens, where their whole synergy is sacrificing their own tokens for gain of some persuasion, and this kind of slots in with what they're trying to do in a few ways. So I would say that if there is a home for this, it will be in some sort of token strategy, whether it's green-black tokens with sapperlings or black-white with the current sort of standard build of tokens as it stands. But I think this could be a pretty powerful effect, and it's just a big dude for 2, which could just be good enough to to win. And it is it could be particularly devastating in the mirror, because I know your life total sometimes gets out of hand in the mirror match of that deck. So resetting your opponent's life total could be backbreaking potentially, especially if you just cast it and then you have enough to overwhelm their own force and win the game. So I think there is an archetype that already exists that kind of fits the bill for this cat. So we'll see.
Yeah, I like it. I think that it has diminishing returns, obviously, so you won't see a ton of play, but it will be, I think, in those archetypes which are being pushed. So next up is Vicious Offering. This is a generic and a black for an instant. It has kicker, sacrifice a creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until a turn. If the spell was kicked, that creature gets -5/-5 until a turn instead. I actually think that this removal spell is possibly better than the first one we talked about, the you destroy a non-legendary creature. Being an instant that can give -5/-5, meaning it does kill, Hazoret. It technically kills the Scarab God, maybe not permanently. And the addition of sacrifice a creature, there's plenty of decks that can make that not at all an issue or an absolute bonus. I think it's also kind of crazy how well this actually works with Fatal Push. Yeah. Because you can trigger Revolt for your Fatal Push, and play both of those in the same turn to do some important things. So I think this is a really good removal spell for Standard.
Again, we just got done talking about tokens, but that's going to be another deck that just has a lot of free sort of creatures that aren't doing anything that you can sack.
And we already have black-white tokens that has things like the black-white enchantment.
Yeah, the hidden stockpile.
And if you do this on your turn and you sack your servo token, you're just going to get another one. So you didn't really have a cost. So I think it's pretty good.
Okay, I can see that.
Fair enough.
So this isn't on the list, but I'm kind of wondering why.
Which one?
Yawgmoth's Vile Offering.
Is it not?
You think it's not on the list?
Oh, it was supposed to be. I even said it was.
It's another offering.
My apologies.
Vicious
It should have been on there.
Yawgmoth's Vile Offering.
So
this is the black legendary sorcery. It's 4 and a black. Can only cast it if you have a legendary creature or planeswalker. Put up to one target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Destroy up to one target creature or planeswalker, then exile Yawgmoth's Vile Offering. So I think this one's actually better than any of the other ones we talked about so far. Being able to, just reanimate anything, from any graveyard, and also just, killing. Being able to reanimate a large creature or a planeswalker and then killing a planeswalker seems pretty good. Do you think it's awkward that this and the Saga, the Eldest Reborn, exist in the same set because they both cost the same? They kind of do similar things, but whatever. That aside, I don't know. I think this one is probably more playable than the blue or white one.
I agree with that, and it still has the same hoop to jump through, but it's definitely pretty powerful and can create a swing that is devastating. Just, your best thing's gone, and I have, my best or your best thing, and now let's play. Because especially if it's a Planeswalker, then you also get to use the Planeswalker that turn too. It's pretty gross.
Yeah, it's a lot of value just in one card. Yeah. Like we said with the Eldest Reborn, like, well, it's a 3-for-1. Like, I don't know if it's good, but it's a 3-for-1. It's like, well, this is a 2-for-1. And then depending on like what you get to do with the Planeswalker or the creature, it could be more than that.
Right.
Yeah, like you already mentioned this once, but things like Ravenous Chupacabra, you could easily find a way to turn this into a 3-for-1 too.
Oh, yeah, it's not hard.
Oh man, so what do we think of black?
I think I feel like we're gonna have a lot of the same answers for these colors, and I think that's really good for the set. I think I got a lot of interesting stuff to play with, like a lot of stuff that's potentially powerful, and I like we got a couple of decent removal spells, some fun build around me cards, like pretty much anything that I said about white or blue kind of carries forward with black.
Yeah, I think black has a lot more wait and see. There aren't like any crazy cards that jump out like, yeah, this is going to be a staple.
We don't necessarily have like Vraska's Contempt or anything like that. I'll concede that.
Yeah, there are a lot of cards that like might be good, but I'm not sure yet. So, but I do think there are a lot of interesting cards, and I wouldn't be surprised to see like Phyrexian Scriptures be a card that people play and things like that.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, let's move over to red, which also has a lot of interesting things, and we're gonna start off with Fight Fire with Fire. Right, that is Metallica. Yeah,
Fight with Fire.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Fight with Fire. Whatever. Is I thought my joke was funny. You're mean. This is 2 generic and a red for a sorcery that has Kicker. The Kicker is an additional 5 generic and a red, so a total of 9. So Fight with Fire deals 5 damage to target creature. If this spell was kicked, it deals 10 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets instead. So this was the first bit of Jaya Ballard art we got spoiled too, and so I think it's pretty sweet that it's on this card. But this is also an interesting like Urza's Rage impersonation, which is a very famous card with Kicker. It was a 4-mana spell that could deal 3 damage, but if it was kicked, it cost 10, and dealt 10. It was uncountable.
It was 3 for 3.
Was it 3 for 3?
It was 3. Yeah, it was an instant 3 mana, 3 damage.
Okay, it was 3. That was 4 for 10. Yeah. But Urza's Rage couldn't be countered or prevented. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So not exactly there, but this has the ability to be divided once you kick it. So I don't know how often you are kicking it. I certainly have tried to already, and Morgan's had it happen to him. But I will say that the base damage of this dealing 5 damage to a creature. And recently we've had things like Roast, where we get to choose a certain type of creature to deal 5 to,
or even like something like Cut.
Right. So I think this is already a playable card in Standard, just based on red needing to deal with things that have 5 toughness. Specifically, Lyra Dawnbringer, which we already talked about. Like, red needs a way to kill that. So I think I like this card a lot, and if you really want to get into what red is doing in this set, when we talk about like the first Eruption coming here shortly, or Jaya Ballard herself, they really do play well together if that's the direction you want to go, and I think that's cool. Jaya flavorfully may not, she as a Planeswalker, we'll get to her, she may not be that good, but I like that the cards they've given her play pretty well with her. Just, hey, let's burn things. Let's burn them down. Her identity is not in question to me, whereas Chandra's was in question for a while. Like, Jaya's is not. Here's the ability to burn things.
Yeah, it's really too bad that the text is so long on this card, because it probably would have had sweet
I know. That's all right.
The card speaks for itself, though.
It does.
Before we jump into the first Eruption, I do want to give a shout out to Firefist Adept, because that man is very concerned that his hands are on fire. That's just all his things. He's like, oh god. All right. Moving on.
Okay. All right. The first Eruption. So this is a first red saga, I guess we're seeing. So it's 2 and a red. Act 1 deals 1 damage to each creature without flying. Act 2. Add 2 red mana. Act 3. Sacrifice a mountain. If you do, the first Eruption deals 3 damage to each creature. So do you have to sack a mountain for that?
No, it says if you do.
But it doesn't say you may sacrifice a mountain.
Oh.
I think that's there, so it's like if you don't have any mountains.
Oh, that's fair.
So you can't just do it.
Interesting.
I don't think this card is very good. I mean, it's just that it has... The abilities like don't seem to go together as well as some of the other ones to me.
I disagree, but I feel like they are disjointed. Maybe that's what you mean.
Maybe that's what I'm going for.
But I think the way that it's supposed to be used is fairly like set up the way it is. Like this helps you ramp into your 4 or 5 drop, probably a planeswalker, and then protects the planeswalker. And I think the way that's set up, having already used it a couple times, and Morgan saw me do this a little bit earlier, it does actually sequence the way you might want it to. Maybe it seems a little like counterintuitive just because of how things are set up, but it really does set you up to be able to protect. Red currently, the way that they've designed red permanents that aren't creatures. And it could be a creature too. There are a number of creatures that would survive the 3 damage you could ramp into as well. But these are permanents that you want to get some long-term value from. Again, planeswalkers or some various enchantments that you have. And this will allow you to do it without taking the time off that you generally have to and that red decks can't. So I don't know if we'll see a ton of play, but I do think it's designed to help red play some of these weirder permanents that it's been given.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm ready to be proven wrong. I don't know. I'm not real stoked on that card, but
I think in general, like it's cool that these when these trigger and you're already in your first main phase. So that's that's pretty nice. And like you can even you can respond to this. You can tap the mana for like the amount you need to sacrifice. So you don't lose out on it in your first main phase if you needed it. So, but yeah, I think this is pretty nifty, and we'll see. I agree. Like it's kind of weird. Yeah, I think it's fine though. Like it's good to have a weird card. So. Yeah. Next up was the Flame of Keld,
another red saga. This is a generic and a red for a saga that says Act 1, discard your hand. Act 2, draw 2 cards. Act 3, if a red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player this turn, it deals that much damage plus 2 to that permanent or player instead. This is another weird one. Discarding your hand doesn't always sound great, especially since it costs 2 mana.
2 mana, yeah.
It makes you think you want to cast it early. But I think Act 3 on this is really dangerous for a lot of decks because it doesn't, and what we've seen in the past is damage is doubled, but this is a red source you control only, and it's a red source, meaning red creatures too. So there's a lot of ways, either token strategies or with a bunch of burn spells. Obviously, you're going to discard your hand, so it wants you to have a board presence here. But I think there's going to be a way to really abuse this card, and you might just go from they cast that card, and again, it feels like the other ones where you go, "Oh, I better deal with their board, or I'm just gone." This is just the game's over.
You're thinking way too fair with this card.
That's probably true.
This is like in Modern, you play this in Dredge, and you just discard your hand, and then the next turn you just dredge a million things.
All right.
And then you do a Conflagrate for a million.
Don't you have to Conflagrate and discard your hand to do it?
You do, but you can dredge Life from the Loam for example, and cast that.
You only have 1 turn to cast it, but I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could do the things.
All right. Yeah. I didn't think about this as a dredge enabler, but it certainly is a dredge enabler.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the thing that you can do.
Yeah,
for sure.
There are a number of cards that let you do a similar thing. Either discard your hand or Cathartic Reunion style cards.
Sure.
This one is a little bit more all in, I guess, because they discard everything, but.
Well,
it's kind of what Dredge wants to do anyway.
Compared to Cathartic Reunion, though, if you cast this on 2 and they counter it, you're not out anything.
Right.
Cathartic Reunion, you can get super blown out with a counter spell. So, I didn't think about that. Maybe that's true. All right, I was thinking of this card as I just want to do lots of red damage, and it also makes Dredge good.
It could be that as well, but yeah, that's that's where my mind went when I saw it.
No, that makes total sense, and I think it's cool that you can look at these 2 red sagas already and look at them and have completely different ideas on how they operate, which I think is interesting.
Well, I think that's what's awesome about just the sagas in general. I think I have not played with either of these, so I could be wrong on one or both, whatever. But these are cards that I think you're gonna have to play with to really get a good feel on what these actually do, and once you play with it, a couple times, you'd be like, okay, I now that I see how it plays out, this is how I want to maybe build around this.
So. Fair enough.
All right. Next card. Get to Lava Runner.
Yeah.
They put Lava Mancer.
Did I put Lava Mancer? My bad. Lava Runner.
Not that one.
Again, apparently I can't read today.
Lava Runner.
It's a consistent problem.
So, that's what we'll see on this one. So it's a single red. It's a 1/2 human wizard. As long as there are 2 or more instant and or sorcery cards in your graveyard, it gets +1/+0 and has haste.
So this card isn't necessarily for standard. It definitely is something to look at for Pauper, though. For Pauper Burn.
Yeah, that's
specifically. Because that is more of a deck that relies on you have more powerful spells than you do creatures. But this is one of the times where it's like, well, this is a creature you probably would want to play.
Yeah, Pauper Burn generally plays like 8 creatures or something like that?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
And they're just like the ones that deal like that ping when you
like
cast
the Archer and then
the 0/3 that taps and untaps when you play an instant or sorcery spell. So
yeah, so it's a 1/2. If you play it on turn 1, it's a 1/2 for a single red. It's not that great, but mid game could be a Goblin Guide.
You could be attacking for 2 in like Pauper Burn. You could be theoretically attacking for 2 on turn 2.
Sure,
because you could just cast 2 burn spells and then attack for 2.
Yeah, fair.
Which is pretty good. So I don't really necessarily see it in standard. The only thing that like I could see trying it in is the red-white metal deck because it doesn't die to Path of Metal.
And could have haste.
And yeah, it could have haste. But that's kind of the only thing. But that's really a corner case because you're not playing a lot of instants of sorceries. So, but I don't know. I was playing it over the Buccaneer as just like having something that can always come down on turn 1 and attack. So, not necessarily attack on turn 1, but whatever. But yeah, that's why that card's on there.
Cool. Next up is Goblin Chain Whirler. This is the red version of the triple cost. So this is red, red, red for a 3/3 Goblin Warrior. As first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. This card is off the chain.
Indeed.
I don't know what to say. I think out of this whole cycle, this is I think the best one. Maybe the Greenwood could contend.
Yeah, I think the green one's the best. But
I don't know, man.
For reasons that not for the creature itself, but maybe for the surrounding support.
Very possible. I mean, Llanowar Elves helps push that one. Don't get me wrong. But this card is very gross, and the way that they're again the tokens that are pushed in this already. How many creatures randomly do have X1? What this card does, and the fact that it's a 3/3 first strike. This card immediately makes me think of Boros Reckoner. Like I can't help myself. But in play, it is very good. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see a lot of this card, and it's going to really it messes with a lot of things. Obviously, it kills X1s. By virtue of having first strike, it has pretty interesting board presence for a red card. But also the fact that it deals damage to opponents and their planeswalkers. There's a lot of play patterns where it's like play Chandra, tick down, go to 1, kill this. Teferi is the same way. We'll talk about in a minute. Ticks down, goes to 1. And as a follow-up, this is a really good way to get a little bit of tempo back from those turns where they got to sort of tap out for a planeswalker and they think it's protected, and then you're just like, oh no, it's gone. And that is pretty powerful too.
Yeah, I think it's super solid creature all around. 3/3 first strike for 3 is pretty good. The 1 damage definitely matters. Probably more than you think.
Yeah, it's for sure.
So, yeah. And we're talking about potential token strategies and things like that. This is a card that could prevent those from really taking hold because it's just incidentally, I just have this card that wraths you that is just a creature,
It's just a good creature as well.
So, can we talk about how this card makes me not miss Rampaging Ferocidon as much, and may also be one of the reasons they banned Rampaging Ferocidon? Because they knew this was coming down the pike, and those two cards together... It's not only can you not gain
tokens
life,
could not ever
not only are you punished for them coming into play, but once they're in play, they're probably all going to die. Now, so Dave, this just like the Knights, I have grouped a couple of the next goblins together. If you want to just put them all together,
I'm not even looking. I can probably guess what you have.
Go ahead.
I'm going to guess Goblin War Chief,
Ding.
Siege Gang Commander,
Ding.
and Prospector.
Yeah, that's it. Ding.
Skirk Prospector. So these are all cards they're all reprints. And they have all proven to be not only constructed playable, but very good.
Yeah, incredibly strong.
Yeah. Goblin War Chief is somewhat surprising to me. If you don't know what that is, it's 1 red for a 2/2 Goblin Warrior. Goblin spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and also goblins you control have haste. Siege King Commander, we've seen this reprinted a couple times now, actually. It's 3 red for a 2/2. Enters the battlefield, you create 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, and you can pay 1 and a red to sack a goblin. Have it deal 2 damage to any target. And Skirk Prospector might have been maybe the craziest reprint.
Oh man, I'm so
we haven't seen
excited.
this since Onslaught.
Which and it's funny because like it was already spoiled. Like it wasn't in the leaked.
It
fact.
was referenced.
It was referenced, but like
Nobody really put it together.
Well, some people did, some people didn't. We didn't at all whatsoever.
Nope. I put it together by virtue of my desire.
So Skirk Prospect, if you've never played with this card, it's kind of an old card. Single red for a 1/1 goblin, and then has a sack a goblin, add a red mana. So back in the day, you used to be able to, play a turn 1 Skirk Prospector, and then on turn 2 you can sack it, play a War Chief, and then turn 3 follow that up with any manner of goblins. Sometimes you put some. What's the one I'm thinking of? Pile drivers.
Yeah, pile drivers were common. 1 mana pile drivers, and they had haste.
Yeah, we don't have that one in standard anymore.
Sometimes it was goblin sharpshooter
Yeah.
with haste. And that
Also works well with the sharpshooter because you can sack your own.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Granted, that's
We
not
don't have that one either.
That was not in. That one's not even a modern, unfortunately. But pile driver is in modern, and they've actually given us a lot of tools for modern goblins to be kind of interesting. Now, there's still some things that are missing. We don't have goblin matron or ringleader.
Yeah, those are big ones.
But they're trying. Like it does feel like they want goblin. Like this is not set up to be that good in standard, in my opinion. Like War Chief, if you look at the goblins that are legal in standard, even after this, War Chief is not that good. It doesn't interact well with Goblin Chain Whirler, which is probably the best goblin.
Yeah.
But this feels a lot more like a modern plant. Now, granted, goblins could get pushed in a set that's coming forward in standard.
Yeah, we still have a core set, so.
But man, these all make me so happy, and Skirk Prospector makes me super happy because that card really does make certain goblin decks go. I've been playing 8-Whack for a little bit in anticipation of this, and I bought these goblins thinking I would just get War Chief, and I wasn't even sure it was good enough. Getting Prospector, you can do so many things now. So
Yeah. I will say Siege Gang Commander is really good. You don't even have to be playing a goblin deck. Like, just Siege Gang Commander on its own is 8 damage. It represents, 8 damage that you don't even have to attack. Yeah, I mean, I've played this card in like non-goblin decks. It's a card that you can put in your sideboard and you can bring it in. If you're playing like a control style deck and people are going to board out removal, bring in the Siege Gang Commander, you can just completely take over a game with it. I think it's an awesome card to have back in the format.
Yeah, it's obviously this is a reprint, but if you are new-ish to the game, remember P and Kieran and Nalar, we get sort of that effect back, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it fights with some 5-drops in the format right now, especially Glorybringer, but it's certainly good enough. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, exciting reprints, exciting things for modern, and things to remember that are in standard. Next up, we have Jaya Ballard. This is 2 red for a legendary planeswalker, Jaya. It comes into play with 5 loyalty and has 3 abilities. It ticks up to add 3 red to your mana pool. That mana can only be spent to cast instant or sorcery spells. You can also add 1, so it only ticks up, to discard up to 3 cards, then draw that many cards. So you have the red version of looting. And then you have a -8, you get an emblem with you may cast instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard. If a card is cast this way, if a card cast this way, we put it in your graveyard, exile it instead. So her ability is sort of set up to put, make it easier to cast instant and sorceries or to discard cards from your hand to find new ones, and then eventually you get to cast other things from your graveyard. Fortunately, Jaya doesn't really protect herself in any fashion. You can cast it on 5, and if you have a removal spell, tick up and cast that, which is nice. I've been playing around with her just because I have to. I don't know if you understand. This is what I do. Okay, I've already tested out and had a board state that had Jaya and Chandra and Pia all together, and it was a really I cried for a minute. It was a touching moment.
If it's a
a single tear.
If it's a red card that costs 4 or more, Mike's probably playing it. So.
Yeah, I do think that it's just in playing with it a little bit, it's better than people are giving it credit for. It has a ton of loyalty, and I cannot keep stressing how much more difficult interacting with planeswalkers are. Like, doing a little bit of testing and having the first time somebody cast an unlicensed disintegration against me, that can't hit a planeswalker anymore. Like, this is really important. Your planeswalkers don't just get splash damage, and God, that's why the Chain Whirler is so important, because it does splash planeswalkers. So I think her loyalty, I could be wrong about this, but in my mind, her loyalty being so high with the change in the planeswalker rules is really sort of a sneaky way of saying that she does have some amount of protection. So I don't know what play she'll see. It's a very specific deck. You have to have a lot of red sources. For discussion's sake, I was playing it in a deck that was also playing Chain Whirler, so there was pretty much only mountains.
Yeah.
And I think she obviously works very well with the next legendary sorcery we'll talk about, but I don't overlook it. She doesn't seem incredibly powerful, but I do think there's a deck that would want her and could abuse it. She also helps kick things for 10 damage.
She seems a little too specific, in my opinion.
It's very possible
to see like widespread play. Like you said, like the deck has to really be built with her in mind. And I don't know if the payoff is worth it. Like, you don't really want to play Planeswalkers for the ultimate. So, like, if you're like, yeah, not. The ultimate's awesome, but, like, the other abilities are not that great.
I think the discard up to 3 cards and draw that many cards, like, I think that's really deceptively powerful. It really is.
Yeah.
It lets you filter. So, that was the thing with Chandra Flamecaller. Obviously, I think Chandra Flamecaller was more powerful than this card is. But that ability on Chandra Flamecaller to just sort of reset your hand was pretty. It was one of the things you didn't think about it until you really needed it, but you really could reset your hand, and this does too.
But that wasn't the reason you were playing that card. Like when Chandra Flamecaller was played, is played basically as like a wrath, and then that could also draw you some cards. Win you the game, but with the 3/1s or whatever. I'm
not really saying it's going to be great. I agree with you. It's going to be a corner case one, but I do think that people have sort of decried it as being bad, and I don't think it's bad. I think when it is good, you will be surprised at how good it is. But it's certainly no Chandra Torch Defiance. Like, it's not going to just go into a deck and I like how Morgan just started nodding like, oh yeah, I forgot Chandra was around.
Yeah.
So she does help cast this next legendary sorcery, though, which I think is obscenely powerful.
Yeah, this one might be the best one. So Jaya's Immolating Inferno. It's X red. It's the red legendary sorcery. Deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. Just pretty ridiculous.
Right.
So say if you cast this for just X equal 3. Seems pretty reasonable, right? You just, deal 3 to an opponent. And given with the new rules, you can do 3 to an opponent, 3 to a planeswalker, 3 to another planeswalker.
Right, yeah,
you don't even have to hit a creature.
Planeswalkers, which is crazy. You could never do that before.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I don't know. Like, it's an X spell.
But
yeah.
No, it just
it is what it is.
It kills things dead. That's what this thing should be. It's your fireball variant for the set that is pretty powerful. You have a hoop to jump through, but I think like this is like the one instance where we do have like a really good pairing between like here's a legendary permanent, here's just planeswalker, and here's that spell, and it's just like they pair so well together.
This is going to be one of those rares that people are like, oh, and my opponent had the red legendary one.
Oh, limited at rare, like this is really gross.
Yeah,
this is going to be one of those rares that you open and sealed, and you're just like, yeah,
exactly.
We're doing the thing.
It's powerful. Don't underrate it. Don't just write it off as like another fireball. Like it's pretty good.
Again, I've already mentioned Fall of the Titans, which spawned its own deck essentially. This feels like it could do that as well.
Yeah.
So, next up, quickly talk about Keldon Warcaller. We already mentioned this card. It's a generic and a red for a 2/2 human warrior. Whenever it attacks, you may put a lore counter on target saga you control.
Yeah, it lets you skip chapters.
He wasn't much of a reader.
Well, yeah, Warcaller, not a good student. Definitely Cliff Notes.
Yeah, the Cliff Notes. That's it.
And it's on the Cliff.
God! He's on a cliff in the art.
So this guy's just like blowing in a horn in the art. Is he just like spoiler alerting everybody? He's just like, spoiler, this is how it ends.
We've looked at a lot of
all your non-artifact creatures die.
We've looked at some of the sagas, and again, I think with Phyrexian Scriptures is actually kind of hilariously fine.
Yeah.
We're looking at some of the red ones. If you have this in play, and then you play the Flame of Keld, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to draw 2 cards. Next turn's the turn. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of scary, I think. I don't know if it's good enough and just a generic 2/2. It only interacts with this one specific thing. But it's interesting.
It's a really odd card because there's no other card in the set that does this, right?
No,
because this is the only card, and it's like red, which red seems to have like probably the least powerful like sagas, or like least splashy ones. So I don't know. It's a real odd card. I do like that it triggers on the attack and doesn't necessarily need to connect with your opponent. So
Good, like,
you can just kind of
look at the color pile wise, like red, blue. That card, like in limited, that card with the time of ice.
Yeah.
Tap this one, tap this one. Oh, guess what's happening next turn?
All right.
So I think that's
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, you can do some cool things. It seems like, I don't know, just interacts with this like very specific card, type of card.
I agree. I just think
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah. All right. What else we got here?
Another fairly quick one, but it's worth fun to mention.
Radiating lightning, which this is like Chandra's whatever that card was, the 5-mana one.
Kinda, yes.
Yes, this is a 3 in a red instant, deals 3 damage to target player and 1 damage to each creature that player controls. Man, if you have like 1 toughness creatures, you are not going to beat any red deck in this format.
Saproling decks, I think, are going to be people are really pushing them, especially with the Song of Freyalise, which we'll get to.
Well, the good thing is,
you have all
a
these
ton
effects.
of answers. Yeah.
And I think that's important they put them in there. Again, look at that. As a set that has its own archetype built in and answers to the archetype. I don't know why. I don't know where they got this
We've
idea.
gone a little overboard, but
This young upstart designer named Richard Garfield, they should hire him again. Oh my gosh. All right.
Seems like he's got a lot of good ideas. Things going on in his mind.
All right, let's go to Squee. I don't know why my voice sounded like that when I said it. I was trying to get like more excited, and I just sounded like I was Squee.
Can I just say how sad I am about Shiv and Fire?
I thought it was Burst Lightning, and it's just not.
It's just strictly where it's Burst Lightning. It's Burst Lightning that can't go to the face.
It does have a Shivan Dragon in it though, which is pretty cool.
It has really sweet art, but it makes me sad. Anyway,
so we are skipping Skizzik, which I don't think has any standard actual applications, but hey.
but it's uncommon. You can put it in your common uncommon
There it
cubes
is.
now. Sweet.
Squee the Immortal, a 1 red for a legendary creature goblin. It's a 2/1. You may cast Squee the Immortal from your graveyard or from exile. So 1, Squee's still around. He's got his toy. He's never going to die. Okay. I wish that he, after like... hold on here, I'm going to make sure I have a good one here. After Tsar Belzenlock dies, that Squee's just like, well, I'm still here, so it's me. But I don't know, like 3 mana for a 2/1's a lot, but 3 mana for a 2/1 that you can't get rid of? Like it doesn't matter what you do, you just can't get rid of it?
Even if you would seal away,
Yeah.
he just gets out of the seal.
can't-
He's like, I'm back.
Does Ixalan's Binding actually get rid of it?
I guess
Because
technically.
you can't cast
You
it?
can't cast it.
Okay, so Ixalan's Binding does it, that's it. So if
I don't know how.
So Squee isn't a planeswalker, but he gets locked on Ixalan like a planeswalker. So there you
Weird.
go. But I think otherwise, I don't know how much this will actually see play. But if you thinking of some of the blue-black decks, if it's just pure attrition, then having access to a card that you always have something to do with. That's why I go back to cards like Chandra's Phoenix, obviously a card that I enjoy a lot, that had a lot of ways to come back, and that's why it was so good. This card just always comes back. And 2 power is not very impressive, but over the course of a game where your opponent just can't keep drawing removal spells every turn, it's kind of interesting. Unfortunately, the control decks have really good finishers right now, so I don't know if that's how Magic really works, but I'm glad this exists.
I'm not really that impressed by this card. I think it's cool, and I think it's flavorful for a Squee. I just 3 mana 2/1. No matter how many times you can cast it, I don't think is going to be that great.
Fair enough.
I do think it has some legacy applications with like the food chain deck.
Yeah, now there's a couple cards that can do with that
Yeah,
now.
it has like kind of the same Miss Meadow Griffin, whatever that thing's called. Is that what it is?
Right?
Mist Hollow
Moon-
Griffin.
Mist Hollow
Miss
Griffin.
Hall. I was going to say Miss Moon,
Yeah.
so that's good. And Eternal Scourge as a...
Yeah, so has some applications there, so you may see it pop up. I don't know. I don't play Legacy, but yeah, ultimately I don't think it makes it in Standard or Modern.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, let's see. Next up, Vyrix Bladewing. This is a sweet card.
Oh, yeah.
So it's 2 red for a legendary dragon, 4/4 flying, has kicker 3. When Vyrix Bladewing enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create Karox Bladewing, a legendary 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. So this is kind of a callback to Broodmate Dragon, I guess, or a similar card in any case.
And definitely a callback to Rorik's Bladewing. So
Well, yeah, with the name, yeah. Yeah, 4 mana, 4/4 flying. It ain't what it used to be.
Look around Standard. Oh, hey, what's up, Rekindling Phoenix?
Yeah, this
But-
isn't. What was the dragon that was in Dragons of Tarkia that was just like hit him for 3?
Thunderbreak.
Thunderbird
Thunderbird Regent. Yeah, that one is sweet. This one doesn't give you that same kind of value if it dies immediately. But late game, getting 2 creature, 2 4/4 flyers for 7 mana is not bad. And there are some situations where you definitely want the legendary type to trigger. Maybe your or your not Chandra's, but Jaya's Immolating Inferno,
or your Mox
Sure.
Ambers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
I think that's where this card really lies is that. But I also think that we have a lot of cards that just add ancillary mana. We have things like Gildalos getting a reprint we haven't gotten to. We have Chandra Torch Defiance. We have the aforementioned Mox. We also have green getting a lot of good ramp creatures, including Llanowar Elves. So while Rekindling Phoenix is obviously more powerful than this, and Chandra is also the right 4-drop here, in those mid-range decks where you have a tendency to flood, man, I'll take the card with Kicker, right? Like that's the thing. Like that's why Storm with Dragon was so good too, because you had a base level, and then if you flooded, you had Monstrous, and this feels like that a little bit to me. So I really like Spherix Bladewing. It might be fighting for space in this current standard format, but I think it's got at some point it's going to be good. I think it just is. So. Let's finish up red with Wizard's Lightning, which is 2 generic and a red for an instant. Wizard's Lightning deals 3 damage to any target, and it costs 2 less to cast if you control a wizard. So it's a lightning bolt. Bolt.
If you got one of them wizards.
And honestly, again, if there's a wizard's deck, you're probably priced into playing lightning bolt.
Yeah.
So seems pretty fine actually. So again, we already mentioned these cards worked like they did with the dragon cards. It'd feel a lot better. I also feel like if these cards worked like the dragon's card,
They'd be too good.
you'd be playing it in modern.
Yeah.
Like, I'll reveal my Snapcaster Mage to bolt you, and then I'm just going to play 8 bolt. Yeah. So what do you think of red?
I think red's kind of maybe the most disappointing color that we've come across.
Oh, you shut your mouth.
I'm just saying, I think it is.
I don't think so.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's way better than black.
I totally agree.
I mean,
my gosh, Morgan.
You have like
red has not betrayed you here. There have been sets where red has betrayed you. How can you be like this?
I guess like Chain Whirler and like the sagas aren't that appealing. Fight with Fire is fine. The dragon is tempting, but meh. Jai is kind of meh. The Inferno is the real deal, but you have to find a way like how you put that all together.
Once you do not listen to him, I thank you for everything you did in this set.
And Siege Gate Commander's great.
Yeah, it's our Prospector.
Sure. I'm not interested
Morgan,
in Skirk Prospector.
I'm telling you, you don't know.
I'm sure I don't, but it's just like not a card I'm interested in like trying to know.
You're gonna find out.
Probably.
So I'll say this. So red has been one of the best decks in standard. Just mono red aggro has been one of the best decks in standard. We saw it go undefeated through GP last week, right? There isn't a whole lot in this set for like the aggressive red deck, save for maybe the Chain Whirler, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. It didn't really need much.
You didn't need much of a push.
But it does get a lot of, situational like sweeper type cards, and you get a lot of like big red style of cards, which maybe we're lacking in the format. So I like that it gives red kind of a different angle and a different I don't know, just a different angle in standard anyway, or it gives you something else to do other than just like attacking and burn spells. And
I'll agree with that. Yeah. So now we're finished with red. This is probably a good like cut. So this is cut on episode 1 of our spoiler review. And so let's go ahead and, of course, thank our sponsor again, Comic Town. Check them out at Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook, or take a look at their webpage, worldofcomictown.com. If you have any questions or concerns for us, we're on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is YourEndStep, and when you add us, it's at YourEndStep. We also have a Gmail account at YourEndStep@gmail.com. And we have on Facebook. You can just do a quick search for at Your Endstep, and we'll pop right up. You can give us a like and send us a message if you have any questions. We also have Patreon, so feel free to check that out. It is at www.patreon.com/@YourEndstep. We, of course, give a thanks to all of our patrons that help make the show possible week in and week out. We really couldn't do it without you. And if you do want to contribute to us in that way, we have multiple tiers that'll kind of work into your budget, as it were, and we'd really appreciate it. That's going to be everything for this week. We'll be back next week with part 2 of the Dominaria set review, and you have a great one. Bye.